Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight I have got some absolutely wild stories that will help you fall asleep. I accidentally eavesdropped on a first date that felt like watching a dreamer trying to spark life into a brick wall. I was at a restaurant just outside Boston Mid-Range. Nothing fancy, but nice enough for a date. I was early, my friend, running late, so I had about 20 minutes of solo time at my table. Next to me, in the same booth but technically a separate table, sat a young couple who looked to be in their mid-20s. They arrived a minute after I did. Across from me and to my left sat a man. Heavy-set, pale, with a bright red beard and the posture of someone either very tired or permanently unimpressed. Across from him, beside me, sat a young woman with expressive eyes, neat makeup, and a polite energy that I could feel even from my seat. It was clearly a first date. She smiled. He grunted. She talked. He sipped a whiskey cocktail. She ordered a wine, asked for it to come with her meal, but they brought it early. She laughed and thanked the server anyway. And then, the conversation started. At first, it was small talk, the kind where one person tries to make it work and the other seems to be calculating how long is polite before leaving. I started jotting things down, not with judgment but curiosity. I do this sometimes when alone in public, like sketching, but with words, a habit from long subway rides and solo lunches. She admitted this was her first app date. He said he'd been on a lot. Silence. She asked him if he wanted to know anything about her. He responded, "Sure." "Like what?" She tried again, asked about plumbing. He said he was a journeyman but that there's no difference, really. She tried to relate. "I went to school for 4 years for my job. I always admired people who just dove into work." He said he had a degree in communications. She blinked. "Oh, that's cool. Surprising, but cool." He said nothing. She confessed she gets nervous on dates and talks too much. Invited him to jump in. He told her, "You're fine." She asked if he'd always lived nearby. He said, "Whole life." She launched into a story she grew up on a houseboat. Her parents studied whales. Like George on Seinfeld, but real. She smiled, looking for a connection. He asked if you can eat whales. She paused. No. She asked if he was okay. Offered to reschedule if it wasn't a good night. He said, "You're fine." She laughed nervously, tried to bridge again. "I actually studied physics. Minored in music so I wouldn't forget piano. Took a year to just play, never looked back." He cut in, "What kind of money you make doing that?" She blinked. "Sorry." He repeated the question. She dodged politely, "It varies." He nodded. "That's what I figured." She asked about Netflix. He studied the menu. She asked if anything looked good. He said, "Not really. Might just ask for a regular burger." She apologized, said she should have checked if he liked seafood. He said, "I do. It's just overpriced." She replied, "Oh, I wasn't expecting you to pay." He grinned. "So you're paying? Cool. Maybe I'll get something else." She laughed, waiting for him to laugh back. He didn't. "Oh, you were joking, right?" He stared. "What joke?" She quietly decided to stick with the wine. He blamed the slow service. She asked about interests. He said, "Sports." She lit up. "Oh, what do you play?" He said he used to play in high school. "Could have gone pro if I wanted." She asked, "What else?" She offered a fun one. "Desert island book choice?" He frowned. "Never been to the desert. I don't really travel." She paused, then said, "You know, I'm actually feeling off. I think I might have to call it a night." He shrugged. "Okay." She stood. "I'll go settle this at the bar." He nodded. "Okay." She looked down, hesitant, then said, "Well, have a good night." He waved her off. "Yeah, you too." This was chill. "I'll text you." She walked out. He stayed. Ordered his burger. Ate the whole thing. I watched this quiet unraveling of a one-sided effort, a hopeful human trying to connect with a brick wall of indifference, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because it was tragic or explosive, but because of how common it felt. It's like people aren't just bad at dating these days, they're bad at showing up. Like someone handed them a life and they're just dragging it around, not even curious about the person across the table. Of course, not everyone is like this, but I'm seeing it more especially among young men. They seem so unbothered, unmotivated, and disinterested in the people they're with, like they're just fulfilling a social quota. Maybe it's burnout, maybe loneliness, or maybe some people are just not meant to date. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. I just needed to get this one out of my head. My wife was left alone for 3 weeks and I wish she'd just cheated instead. Am I underreacting? My wife was left alone for 3 weeks and I wish she'd just cheated instead. 3 weeks ago, I left for a work trip to Germany. My wife didn't want to come. I'll hang back, water the plants, binge some Netflix, she said. She's 39. I thought, okay, she's a grown adult. She'll be fine. She was not fine. Day 2, she tries to make sourdough from scratch using a YouTube video and what she thought was yeast but turned out to be Epsom salt. The result? A rock-hard bread grenade that cracked our marble counter. She named it Crumbzilla and displayed it like a trophy. Then, she decided to go all raw vegan for some reason and ordered 19 pounds of produce from a sketchy organic site. Half of it arrived moldy. The other half she juiced. Exclusively. For a week. Just juice. No solids. She got so dizzy she mistook the laundry hamper for the fridge and put all our frozen meals in it. They've since liquefied. To survive, she pivoted to eating Pop-Tarts and spoonfuls of peanut butter. Her justification: balance. Meanwhile, she stopped wearing actual clothes. Just bathrobes. The same one, every day. By week 2 it was 70% robe, 30% soup stains. The dog refused to cuddle her. Last night, I land, exhausted, and I'm greeted by a living room that smells like fermented ginger and regret. She runs to hug me, robe flapping open, holding a jar of pickles in one hand and a half-knitted scarf in the other. Apparently, she took up knitting to relax her stomach. This morning, I wake up to her whispering, "I think I'm a kombucha now," and burping in her sleep. The dog has moved his bed into the bathroom and won't make eye contact with either of us. I grabbed my keys and said I was going out for coffee. The dog followed. He needed air. I needed therapy. So here I am at a cafe with a silent, traumatized schnauzer, drinking espresso like it's holy water. The barista asked if I wanted oat milk. I said no because my trauma already comes in liquid form. Hope your morning's less fermented. Edit. To those raising eyebrows in the comments, hey, fair enough. Humor's subjective. It's a story. No kombucha was harmed, no souls were actually fermented, and yes, the dog is emotionally recovering with the help of peanut butter and a weighted blanket. The relationship is fine. The only thing that truly suffered was the fish's dignity. This isn't a manifesto. The satire. If you made it all the way to the part about vegan hot dog shakes and still thought this was a cry for help instead of a comedy horror spiral, then I truly admire your commitment to missing the point. To everyone else who laughed, side-eyed their own bathrobe, and gave their pets a reassuring pat, thank you. You're the reason the fish hasn't completely given up. Yet, I helped a woman pick out a dress at and tailor months later. She found me again. A few months back, I was waiting outside the fitting rooms at and tailor while my daughter tried on clothes. A woman stepped out, clearly discouraged. She had tried on a ton of things and still hadn't found anything for what she said was her husband's company Christmas party. She glanced at me, lanyard around my neck, pen behind my ear, rookie mistake, and asked, "Can you help me find something that actually works?" I didn't have the heart to tell her I didn't work there. So I just smiled and said, "Let's do it." We spent about 20 minutes picking through racks. She was kind, funny, and I could tell she really wanted to feel good in her own skin again. Eventually, we found a dress that lit her up. She looked absolutely radiant. As she beamed at herself in the mirror, she asked me, "How long have you worked here?" I laughed and told her the truth. "Oh, I don't work here, I'm just waiting on my daughter. We both cracked up. She gave me the biggest hug and said it was the most fun she'd had shopping in ages. I figured that was the end of it. Until last week. I was grabbing coffee at a local bakery when someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was her. She recognized me right away and said, "You helped me find that dress. I've been hoping to run into you again." I wanted to say thank you properly. We sat down for coffee and ended up talking for nearly an hour. Turns out she wore the dress, felt amazing, had the best night in a long time, and it sparked her to start putting herself out there again in all sorts of ways. She's now volunteering at a local women's group and just glowing with confidence. Funny how a small moment between strangers can ripple in ways you never expect. I'm so glad our paths crossed again. Some people really do stay with you. I scammed my husband into liking me, and I admitted it on our wedding day. Admitted in my vows, actually, in front of all of our guests. Just kidding. For me, it was love at first sight for my now husband. Not so much for him. I was his little sister's friend with braces and constant teen girl giggling. He was the older, much hotter, couldn't care less older brother down the hall. I obviously had no shot. Later, we met again through mutual friends, now both older, no headgear. I was just as in love, he was still just as cute, and this time I actually had a chance. I wasn't gonna blow it. I invited him to hang at my place after a friend's birthday party, and I had staged the place. I had casually left out a t-shirt of his favorite football team. You know, just tossed on the back of a chair. Oops. How did that get there? I left a CD of his favorite band on my nightstand, because obviously that's what any casual fan does. I love them too. Duh. I had his favorite drink waiting in the fridge. Super casual. Was I a complete weirdo for doing this? Yes. Did it work perfectly? Also yes. It also made for a perfect wedding story. His sister, a bridesmaid, was only a little annoyed to find out I was using our hangouts as study sessions on her older brother. Just kidding. She thought it was hilarious and knew all her friends thought he was cute, obviously. I babysat for $500 cash. I'll never do it again. I almost didn't take the job. Something about the ad felt off. Looking for a responsible sitter. One night only. Good pay. Cash. Must follow instructions. That was it. No details about the kid, no address, nothing about the hours. Just a burner Gmail account to reply to. I was broke enough to overlook all that. My rent was due in 3 days, and my fridge was down to half a jar of pickles and an expired yogurt. So I sent a message, figuring I wouldn't get a reply. I got one back in less than an hour. Thank you for reaching out. The job is simple. Watch our son, Matthew, from 7 p.m. midnight. $500 cash. Please do not let him look into mirrors. Please do not answer the door if someone knocks and claims to be us. Address attached. I stared at the screen, rereading the message. No mirrors. Don't open the door. Those weren't instructions. Those were warnings. But again, $500. $500 for 5 hours of sitting on a couch while a kid sleeps? I could ignore the creepiness for that. The house was out in the suburbs, tucked away at the end of a cul-de-sac with no streetlights. Every house on the street was dark except theirs. A faint yellow glow behind heavy curtains. The parents greeted me at the door. They looked normal, almost aggressively normal, like the kind of people you'd see in stock photos. Mom in a cardigan, Dad in khakis, both smiling too wide. "We're so glad you could make it," the mom said, ushering me inside. "Matthew's upstairs, already in his room." I nodded, clutching my backpack strap. "Any, allergies?" "Bedtime routine." The dad cut me off. "The instructions in the email are the most important. Don't let him near mirrors. Don't answer the door." "Right?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Can I ask, why?" The mom's smile faltered for half a second, but she recovered fast. "Just follow them. We'll be back at midnight. $500 cash, like we promised." Before I could press further, they slipped out the door. The lock clicked. The house felt wrong once they left. Too quiet. Not the cozy, Suburban quiet where you can hear the hum of a fridge or a distant dog bark. This was sterile, like the silence in an empty hospital wing. I wandered through the downstairs. Every reflective surface was either missing or covered. The bathroom mirror gone, the TV screen draped with a sheet, even the glass in the picture frames replaced with paper. The air prickled against my skin. I checked on the kid. Matthew was sitting cross-legged on his bed, staring at me when I opened the door. He looked about 8. Blonde hair, pale skin, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm your babysitter." He didn't answer, just blinked at me slowly, then asked, "Do you know which ones are real?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The people," he said. His voice was flat, like he was reciting something. "Sometimes they're not them. Sometimes they're copies." I laughed nervously. That's creepy. Where'd you hear that?" He tilted his head, bird-like. "From the other Matthew." I swallowed. "The other Matthew?" He pointed toward the darkened window. "He comes when the glass is open." I pulled the curtains shut tighter. The first knock came around 8:30. 3 slow raps on the front door. I froze on the couch, my phone in hand. The instructions screamed in my head. "Don't answer the door." Another knock. Louder this time. "Hey!" A man's voice called, muffled through the wood. "It's us. We forgot something inside." The parents. My pulse thudded in my ears. It sounded like the dad but flatter, like someone replaying a recording through a bad speaker. I crept closer, careful not to touch the knob. "We just need to come in for a second," the voice said. Behind me, I heard movement on the stairs. Matthew was standing halfway down, clutching the railing, staring at the door with wide eyes. "That's not them," he whispered. The knocking stopped. The hours dragged. Every time I thought the house was quiet again, something else happened. 9:15. I heard footsteps pacing the upstairs hallway. Heavy, deliberate. Except Matthew was sitting on the floor next to me, coloring with broken crayons. 9:47. The TV, even with the sheet over it, flickered to life with static. I yanked the plug from the wall, kept flickering for a full 10 seconds before finally going black. 10:22. Another knock. This time the mom's voice. "Please, he's dangerous. Let us in before it's too late." Matthew started crying, covering his ears. I didn't open the door. At 11 o'clock, I heard whispering. Not from the door this time, from upstairs. I crept up, leaving Matthew on the couch with my phone flashlight. The whispers grew louder as I reached his bedroom. The door was cracked open. Inside, the moonlight from the window illuminated a figure sitting on the bed. Matthew, except I'd left him downstairs. This Matthew looked identical but wrong, the way a wax figure almost looks real until you see the eyes. His lips moved, whispering to himself, words I couldn't quite make out. Then he snapped his head toward me. I slammed the door shut and bolted down the stairs. The real Matthew was exactly where I'd left him. He looked up at me with tears streaking his face. "You saw him," he said. I didn't answer. 11:40. The knocking came again. Both voices this time. The mom and dad in perfect unison. "Let us in." The door rattled like they were trying to break it down. Matthew was shaking, curled against me on the couch. "Don't," he begged. "If you let them in, they'll take you instead." The pounding grew violent, with splintering. I dragged Matthew with me into the kitchen, searching for a back exit. That's when I noticed the one uncovered reflective surface left in the house. The oven door. And in it I saw myself. Except my reflection wasn't moving the same way I was. I staggered back, nearly dropping Matthew. The other me smiled, wide and wrong, teeth too many for a human mouth. The reflection pressed its palm against the glass from the inside. A hairline crack snaked across the oven door. Midnight couldn't come fast enough. I huddled in the kitchen with Matthew, the pounding from the front door shaking the walls, the whispering upstairs turning into full-on giggles, and my reflection grinning from the oven, cracks spiderwebbing wider with every second. I thought I was going to break. Then the noise stopped. All at once. The clock on the microwave blinked 12 a.m. The front door swung open. The parents walked in, smiling, normal again. "You did well," the mom said. She handed me an envelope of cash. My hands shook as I took it. What the hell is wrong with this house? With him. I pointed at Matthew, who clung to my leg. The dad crouched down, prying the boy off me. "He's not our son," he said simply. My mouth went dry. "What?" "We lost Matthew years ago," the mom said. "But things still come through. Things that look like him. Things that look like us. We can't get rid of them, only contain them." They each took one of Matthew's hands. He didn't fight, just looked back at me with hollow eyes. "You did your job," the dad said. "You kept him from escaping. That's all we needed." And before I could say a word, they led him upstairs. The door slammed shut behind them. I stumbled outside, clutching the envelope, the night air biting my lungs. When I got home, I dumped the cash onto my kitchen table. Every bill was crisp, perfect. Except when I flipped them over, the faces weren't of presidents. They were of me, smiling, too wide, with too many teeth. The day I found out my dog had a secret life. So about 2 years ago, I adopted this golden retriever named Milo. Sweetest dog ever. Loves everyone. Typical golden energy. Tail wagging so hard it could knock over a lamp. We live in a quiet neighborhood where a lot of people leave their gates open, and Milo has always been good about staying close to home. I trusted him enough to let him hang out in the front yard sometimes while I worked inside with the window open. One afternoon, I realized it had been a little too quiet for a while. I went outside to call him and he wasn't there. Full panic mode activated. I grabbed his leash and started running up and down the street yelling his name like a crazy person. About 3 houses down, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. Milo was sitting on someone else's porch. And not just sitting. He was lounging like he owned the place. Head up, tongue out, happy as could be. And next to him, an older woman in a rocking chair, feeding him pieces of chicken from a plate. I was like, Milo? The woman looked up and smiled and said, "Oh, you must be Milo's other family." Other family? Turns out, for months, Milo had been slipping away whenever I wasn't looking and visiting this woman, Mrs. Patterson. She lived alone, her kids were grown, and apparently Milo had just decided to adopt her. He'd show up every couple of days, sit politely on her porch, and she'd reward him with chicken, scraps, and the occasional bacon strip. We both laughed about it, and I apologized like 1,000 times for him intruding, but she waved it off and said he was good company. After that, we kind of made it official. Milo had 2 homes. I started bringing Mrs. Patterson groceries once a week, and Milo got to have his second grandma. He still splits his time between us, and honestly, I think he had the right idea. My husband's Trump obsession has turned our home into a MAGA shrine, and I'm losing my mind. I never thought I'd be posting here, but I desperately need to vent. My husband of 12 years has transformed from a reasonable conservative into what I can only describe as a Trump cult member, and it's destroying our marriage. Our house has become a literal shrine to Trump. I wish I was exaggerating. There's a 6-foot Trump cardboard cutout in our living room that he talks to every morning like some sort of religious ritual. Our walls, once decorated with family photos, are now plastered with Trump flags. He even replaced our American flag with a Trump 2024 or death banner. My kids are embarrassed to have friends over. Last week was the final straw. He spent $3,000 of our savings on limited edition Trump gold-plated coins and a certified authentic piece of Mar-a-Lago toilet paper. $3,000. When I confronted him about taking money from our children's college fund, he said, "Trump University will be reopened and make education great again." I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. Every dinner conversation somehow turns into a Trump sermon. He'll randomly shout, "Stop the steal," during family meals. When our 15-year-old daughter got an A+ on her history project about the Civil War, he accused her teacher of being a communist infiltrator for not teaching the truth about Trump's victory. Our bedroom. God, I'm mortified to even type this. He insists on keeping a giant Trump portrait above our bed because Trump watches over us. He even got a Trump tattoo on his chest and keeps trying to convince me to get one too. He calls it his mark of patriotism. His entire personality has been consumed. He changed his wardrobe to only red clothing. He refers to himself as a digital soldier and spends hours posting on Truth Social. When I asked him to help with our son's homework, he said he was too busy fighting the deep state online. The paranoia is getting worse. He installed cameras around our house to watch for Antifa. He thinks our neighbors are deep state agents because they have a pride flag. He threw out our coffee maker because Starbucks is funding the radical left. He even accused our golden retriever of being suspiciously woke because she didn't bark at a Biden commercial. Our sex life? He insists on playing Trump rally speeches in the background and keeps trying to get me to wear a Melania mask. I wish I was joking. He has different MAGA hats for different occasions, including one specifically for bedroom patriot time. I'm dying inside. I found receipts showing he's donated over $15,000 to various Trump-related causes this year alone. Money we needed for our mortgage. When I showed him our overdue bills, he said, "Trump will fix the economy and make us rich. We're facing foreclosure," but he keeps buying Trump merchandise. Yesterday, he announced he's legally changing his name to Donald J. Trump Smith and wants our kids to follow suit. Our 10-year-old son started crying, and my husband told him real patriots don't cry and made him watch 4 hours of rally footage as testosterone training. I've tried everything: marriage counseling. He called the therapist a socialist. Family interventions. He disowned his own mother for suggesting he get help, even pleading with his Trump-supporting friends to tell him he's going too far. Nothing works. He just goes deeper into the rabbit hole. The worst part? Under all this Trump worship, I know my real husband is still in there somewhere. Sometimes, late at night, I catch glimpses of the man I married. But then morning comes, he puts on his MAGA hat, salutes the Trump cutout, and the cycle begins again. At 15, I decided to use shaving cream to shave my balls. At 15, I decided to use shaving cream to shave my balls because sometimes it was hard to get them completely smooth. There were always a few stray hairs left. But as soon as I started shaving, I noticed that my balls were getting cold, and as I ran the razor over them, it burned even more. It felt like I had dipped my balls in liquid nitrogen. I rinsed with a bit of water to remove the cream, but the pain didn't go away. I panicked, sat naked on the bathroom floor, and started crying. The pain was unbearable, and at that moment, all sorts of thoughts raced through my head, like, can I still have kids? Or will they have to amputate? My mom heard me crying and asked if I was okay, but I was sobbing so much I couldn't answer. She told my dad to break down the door, and since my uncles were home, everyone came to the bathroom to see what was going on. My mom asked what had happened, and I begged them to take me to the hospital. She asked why, and I told her I had shaved with shaving cream. My dad and uncle started cracking up, and he told me to relax, that it would pass soon. I finished my shower and went straight to my room because I was so embarrassed. My balls stayed cold for about 2 more days. This happened about 4 years ago, and now I'm almost 19. I thought my neighbor was a jerk, but then I found this in my mailbox. So, I have this neighbor, Dave. He's one of those guys who's always grumbling about something. If it's not the lawnmower noise, it's the kids running around, or the weather being too hot or too cold. He's also notorious for calling people out if their trash cans are a few inches over the property line, or if they park too close to the curb. I've never had an issue with him directly, but I'll admit, I've always found him a bit insufferable. He's that guy who'll stand on his porch and stare you down like you're doing something wrong even though you're just checking your mail. Anyway, last week, I got home from work and checked my mailbox. I had a few letters, mostly bills and junk mail, but one envelope caught my eye. It was from Dave. My first thought was, what now? Is he complaining about my dog barking? But when I opened it, I was honestly taken aback. Inside, there was a simple note that read, I've noticed your car's brake light has been out for a few days. Just wanted to let you know before it becomes a bigger issue. Dave. There was no scolding, no attitude, just a genuine attempt to help. I had no idea how long the brake light had been out, but sure enough, I checked it later, and it was dead. I immediately went over to his house to thank him. When I knocked on his door, he just shrugged and said, I figured you'd appreciate the heads up. Doesn't make sense to have someone driving around with that not working. It hit me how wrong I'd been about him. Maybe he's not the grouchy old guy I thought he was. Maybe he's just a little more blunt than others, but still cares about the community. Moral of the story: don't judge a book by its grumpy cover. What do you think? Would you add anything to it? I, 29M, quit my job after my boss took credit for my project. Now they're begging me to come back. A few weeks ago, I shared how my boss completely stole credit for a major project I had spent months working on. I didn't say anything at first, but when he presented my work to upper management as his own without even acknowledging my contributions, I was furious. I decided right then that I was done. I started quietly looking for new opportunities, and within 2 weeks, I had an offer, better pay, better title, and fully remote. I turned in my resignation, and let's just say, my boss did not take it well. First, he acted indifferent, like he didn't care. Then, 2 days before my last day, HR and upper management suddenly wanted to discuss my future at the company. I politely declined. That's when the real desperation kicked in. My boss, the same guy who had stolen my work, personally pulled me aside and tried to convince me to stay. He claimed I was an invaluable member of the team, and that he always saw leadership potential in me. I asked him why, if that was the case, he had taken full credit for my project. He had no real answer. Just mumbled something about teamwork. I left on good terms with my colleagues, but I made sure to let upper management know why I was leaving. Now, a week into my new job, I got an email from HR at my old company saying they'd be open to negotiating a counteroffer if I reconsidered. Absolutely not. I love my new job, my manager actually respects me, and I get to work in my pajamas. No regrets. For anyone stuck in a toxic work environment, know your worth. The wife and I soiled ourselves after Cece's Pizza. Non-fiction. So today the wife, 22F, and I, 22M, saw an ad on Instagram for $6 Cece's Pizza. We love a good deal, so we had to go, regardless of the quality of food. We didn't get the deal, but we were already there, so paid full price anyways. Cece's was pretty mid, but we ate a ton, $4.20, 20 slices. So overall would rate it June 10th. After this, we walked around a discount furniture store nearby just to look around. I farted a little in the store on the couches without issue. After this, we decided to go get gas on our way home. We were at the Circle K. God bless Circle K. My wife asked me some dumb question and I responded saying, "You know what I think about that?" and then attempted to fart. It was not in fact a fart, I shat myself. She didn't realize I tried to fart, as the shit was mostly silent. I then told her I had to go into the store, to the bathroom, because I shat myself. She was so confused, asking if I was joking, because we were only a minute from home. I realized she was right, so waddled back to the car to sit in my shat pants. She couldn't believe it, as she just bought me these pants yesterday. Shitting myself is not why I needed new pants, by the way. As we were driving away, I explained I was not joking. She found the prospect of me shitting myself so funny that she laughed so hard she pissed herself. Not a little, by the way. Full-on piss. Likely due to the pressure from all the pizza. Once we arrived home, we retreated to our respective bathrooms. In short, we will not eat Cece's again. I thought my upstairs neighbor hated me. Then I found the note. I live on the second floor of a 3-story apartment building, aka the anxiety sandwich zone. Every sound from above or below feels like it's happening inside my skull. For the longest time, I thought my upstairs neighbor hated me. Not for anything I did, just in general. She moved in during the pandemic. Never said hi. Wore big headphones. Dropped things constantly. I'd hear random thuds at 3 a.m., like someone losing a Jenga match in slow motion. Once, something rolled across her floor for a full 30 seconds. Who rolls something for that long? What was it? A bowling ball? A watermelon? Anyway, a few weeks in, I started leaving my shoes at the door and walking in socks. Just in case she could hear me. I turned my music down. Started closing cabinets more gently. I even felt guilty sneezing too loud. Which is wild. Imagine apologizing for sneezing in your own apartment. And then the worst thing happened. One night, I accidentally dropped a full glass of water in the kitchen. Loud crash. Glass everywhere. I cleaned it up fast, but I was convinced she'd come downstairs and yell. Or file a noise complaint. Or both. But instead, the next morning, I found a post-it stuck to my door. Yellow, slightly crumpled. Handwriting like a teacher's. Hey, hope you're okay. I heard a crash last night. Just wanted to check in. I drop stuff all the time too. No judgment, smiling face with smiling eyes. Apt 3C. Reader, I melted. This woman I'd invented an entire villain arc for. Was just me but one floor up. Later that week, I baked banana muffins. Box mix? Let's not pretend I'm a hero. And left some in front of her door with a note. From your equally clumsy neighbor. She sent me a voice note later. These are amazing. Also, I'm pretty sure the rolling sound you heard last week was a cantaloupe. Long story. Now we talk occasionally. Trade leftovers. Send each other memes. Still haven't met in person, but somehow it feels like I've made a friend. Just through walls and floorboards and scribbled notes. And yeah, she still drops things at 3 a.m. But now I just laugh and think, same, girl, same. My coworker accidentally taught everyone in the office a lesson about credit without even trying. This happened last month, but it stuck with me. We had this new guy, mid-20s, super laid back, really friendly but kinda clueless with admin stuff. HR was onboarding him and needed some documents, and apparently one of the things got flagged because his credit history was almost non-existent. He looked so confused, like he didn't even know that was a thing. He kept saying, but I've never missed a payment, and HR had to explain that not having history is its own problem. Then during lunch, he admitted loud enough for a few of us to hear that he avoided anything credit-related because his parents told him, credit cards are how people ruin their lives. He just assumed avoiding credit meant he was being responsible. Everyone kind of paused because, honestly, a lot of us grew up with that same mindset. He's fine now, HR cleared everything and he's building his history slowly using Fizzcard. But watching him panic and then watching everyone silently relate to him was kind of eye-opening. Most of us aren't irresponsible. We're just guessing our way through adulthood and hoping we don't screw it up too badly. I accidentally went on a date with someone who thought I was their other Tinder match. So, a couple months ago I matched with this girl on Tinder. We had a pretty normal convo, nothing crazy, but eventually she asks me to grab coffee. Chill, right? We meet at this cute local spot. She gives me a quick hug, and right off the bat she says, "Wow, you look even better than your hiking pics." Problem is, I don't hike. Like, I don't even walk briskly. I just nod and laugh it off. We keep talking and she starts referencing stuff that makes zero sense. Your dog is so cute. What was his name again? Bentley? I don't have a dog. Never have. Then she mentions how I told her I used to live in Colorado. Again, not me. I've never even been west of Kansas. So now I'm trying to figure out if I have early onset memory loss or if she's mistaking me for someone else entirely. Finally, mid-latte, I ask, hey, just to clarify, what's my name? She looks confused. Jake. Friends. My name is not Jake. We just stared at each other for a solid 5 seconds before she burst out laughing. Apparently, she was messaging 2 guys at once and mixed us up. The worst part? She said, honestly, I thought you were Jake this whole time, but I was vibing too hard to stop. We ended up finishing the coffee, laughing about it, and weirdly enough, we're still dating. She now has me in her phone as not Jake. For 20 years, my mother had one rule: don't ask where your little brothers go. On her deathbed, she finally told me, I don't know why I'm writing this. I guess some part of me thinks that if I type it all out, make it digital and real in a way that isn't just a buzzing in my skull, maybe I can understand it. Or maybe it's just a confession, a warning. I don't know. The house is quiet now for the first time in my life. The only sound is the hum of the old refrigerator and the groan of the pipes when the heat kicks on. For 28 years, there was always another sound. The wheezing rasp of my mother's breathing, the constant, wet cough that punctuated every conversation, and the low hiss of her oxygen tank. That sound was the soundtrack to my life. It's gone now. She's gone. And the silence is so much louder than the noise ever was. I live in the house I grew up in. A 2-story box with peeling paint on a street of other peeling boxes. This whole town is peeling. It's a Rust Belt ghost, a place that industry built and then abandoned, leaving behind skeletons of factories and people with nowhere else to go. I work in one of the few factories still running, doing the same job my father did, stamping out metal parts for machines I'll never see. It's a mindless, deafening rhythm that eats 8, sometimes 10, hours of my day. It pays enough to keep the lights on and buy my mother's cartons of cigarettes, the very things that were killing her. My father left when I was a kid. That was the official story. A note on the kitchen table, a duffel bag gone from the closet. I don't remember him, not really. I have flashes, impressions. The scratch of a beard against my cheek, the smell of grease and cheap aftershave, a deep voice humming a tune I can't place. But he's a ghost. A hole in my life my mother papered over with flimsy stories. The thing is, we were never really alone. There were always the little brothers. They'd show up at night. Mom would come into my room, her hand on the shoulder of a skinny, nervous-looking kid, usually a few years younger than me at the time. They all had the same look. Scruffy hair, worn-out jeans, a wary hunger in their eyes. This one's had it rough, she'd whisper, the smoke from her cigarette curling around her head like a halo of poison. He ran away, no place to go. He can stay with us for a bit. You'll be his big brother, okay? Show him the ropes. And I would. For a week, maybe a little longer, I'd have a brother. The first one, I remember his name was... No, let's just call him the first. He was quiet, but he loved my video games. We'd stay up late, the glow of the TV screen painting our faces, a bag of chips between us. I taught him the secret moves, the cheat codes. He'd sleep in the spare bunk bed, and in the dark, I'd hear him breathing, a small, steady presence in the room. It was nice, not being the only kid in the house. Then one morning, I'd wake up and the bunk would be empty. The sheets were neatly folded, his worn-out backpack gone. The first time it happened, I panicked. I ran downstairs, thinking he'd run away again. My mother was at the kitchen table, smoking, staring out at the gray morning. Where is he? I'd asked, my voice tight. She took a long drag, letting the smoke out in a slow, tired plume. Your father came for him in the night, she'd say, not meeting my eyes. He's going to help your father now. They have important work to do. I was 7. It made a strange kind of sense. My ghost father was a rescuer of lost boys. He'd take them away to a better place, a secret workshop where they do important man things. I was proud in a way. I was helping. I was the first step in their salvation. There were so many of them over the years, maybe a dozen. The one who could draw incredible superhero comics on scrap paper. The one who was a genius at taking apart and fixing things. He got our toaster working again. The one who barely spoke but would follow me around like a shadow. Each time it was the same routine. A week of brotherhood, of sharing my small world. And then, an empty bed in the morning and the same quiet, smoky explanation. As I got older, the story started to feel thin. By the time I was a teenager, I knew it was a lie. My dad wasn't coming back. He wasn't running a secret halfway house for runaways. But I never pushed it. Questioning my mother was like pushing on a wall that you knew was holding back a flood. There was a fragility to her, a deep, abiding terror behind the veil of smoke and cynicism. So I played along. I was the big brother for a week, and then I was alone again. The last little brother came when I was 16. By then, Mom's cough was worse. Her hands trembled. The kid was tougher than the others, more street smart. He asked a lot of questions. He wanted to know about the basement. "What's down there?" he asked one night, pointing at the door off the kitchen. "Just storage and a locked room," I said. "Junk. What's in the locked room?" I froze. There was a room in the basement that was always locked. A heavy, solid wood door with a deadbolt. Mom always said the key was lost ages ago, that it was full of my grandfather's old chemical supplies from his hobby days. Too dangerous to open. "I don't know," I told him. "No one's been in there for years." He looked at me, a sharp, assessing glance. "Smells weird. I think the smell coming from this basement." He was right. A faint, cloying sweetness, like rotting flowers and old meat, sometimes drifted up from under the door. We just got used to it. The smell of an old house. 2 days later, he was gone, and there were no more after him. The years passed. The town rusted a little more. I graduated, got the job at the factory. My life narrowed until it was just the factory, this house, and her. Her world shrank to the living room, then to the hospice bed they set up by the window. The lung cancer was a parasite, eating her from the inside out. As she got worse, her mind started to go. Not all the time, but in flashes. The carefully constructed walls of her reality began to crumble. The lie about my father and the little brothers was one of the first things to show cracks. One night, I was changing her oxygen tank, and she grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her eyes wide with a terror that was more than just fear of dying. It was something ancient, something she'd lived with for decades. "You can't let him go hungry," she rasped, her voice a dry crackle. "Promise me, when I'm gone, you can't let him starve." "Who, Mom?" I asked gently, assuming she was confused. "There's no one else here." "Him," she hissed, her eyes darting towards the floor, towards the basement. "He's been so patient. He gets so hungry." I told the hospice nurse about it. She nodded sympathetically. "It's common," she said. "Terminal lucidity, paranoia, dementia. Her brain is protecting itself by creating narratives." But it felt like more than that. It felt like a truth she'd been holding back for so long was finally boiling to the surface, too hot for the cracked pot of her mind to contain. Driven by a need I couldn't name, I started searching the house. I needed an anchor, a piece of the real past to hold on to. I went into the hall closet, a place of dusty relics and forgotten things, and pulled out the old photo albums. I sat on the floor, the plastic-covered pages crinkling as I opened them. There we were, me as a baby, my mother young and smiling, without the deep lines of pain etched around her mouth, and my father, or where my father should have been. In every single photograph, his face was gone, not just crossed out with a marker, but meticulously, violently scratched away. A tiny, circular violence had been done to each picture, the emulsion scraped down to the white paper beneath, leaving a featureless, horrifying blank where a man's face should be. My blood went cold. This was a secret deliberately kept. Deeper in the closet, tucked under a pile of old blankets, I found a shoebox. It was heavy. Inside, it was full of newspaper clippings. Yellowed and brittle, they were all from neighboring towns, spanning a period of about 10 years. Each one was a small article about a missing child. A 10-year-old who vanished from a playground. A 12-year-old who ran away from a group home and was never seen again. A 9-year-old who disappeared on his way home from school. I started laying them out on the floor, my hands shaking. The dates. They lined up roughly with the memories I had. A clipping from the spring I was 10, when I had the little brother who loved to draw. Another from the fall I was 12, when the kid who fixed the toaster stayed with us. It was a mosaic of stolen children, and their faces, printed in grainy black and white, looked so much like the boys I remembered. Scruffy, wary, lost. I had to know. I took one of the clippings and went to her bedside. She was awake, her breathing shallow. The air was thick with the smell of sickness and menthol. I knelt down beside her, holding out the yellowed piece of paper. The photo was of a smiling boy with a gap in his teeth. "Mom," I whispered, my voice thick. "I remember him. He liked my comic books. You told me Dad came for him." Her eyes focused on the clipping, and for a moment, the fog of morphine and illness cleared. A tear, thick and slow, traced a path through the wrinkles on her cheek. She didn't speak. Instead, her trembling hand fumbled with the drawer of her bedside table. She pulled something out and pushed it into my hand. It was an old VHS tape. No label. "Watch this," she whispered, her breath catching. Her fingers gripped mine. A bundle of cold twigs. "After, not before. Then you'll know." Her eyes held mine, and the terror I'd seen before was back, stark and absolute. "You have to be the strong one now. You have to take over. You have to feed him." Those were the last words she ever said to me. She slipped into a coma that evening and passed away 2 days later. For a week, the house was a blur of logistics. The funeral home, the paperwork, the well-meaning neighbors with their casseroles. I moved through it all like a ghost in my own home. The silence was a heavy presence. The VHS tape sat on the kitchen counter, a black plastic rectangle full of answers I was terrified to hear. Finally, last night, I couldn't stand it anymore. The not knowing was worse than whatever horror the tape contained. I had to know what I was inheriting. I dug the old VCR out of the closet, a dusty behemoth from another age, and hooked it up to the small TV in the living room. My hands trembled as I pushed the tape in. The machine whirred and clunked. Then the screen flickered to life with a burst of blue and static. The picture that resolved was grainy, the color washed out. It was a backyard barbecue. The date stamp in the corner read July 1998. I was a toddler in the video, chasing a ball across a patchy lawn. My mother, impossibly young, was laughing, holding a plate of hot dogs. And then the camera panned and I saw him, my father. He was a normal-looking man. Brown hair, a kind smile, the same build as me. He was grilling, flipping burgers with a spatula. But something was off. Every few seconds, he'd reach back and scratch his shoulder blade, an awkward, pained motion. He'd wince, then force a smile when he saw the camera on him. The scene cut. Now it was indoors, a few weeks later according to the date stamp. My father was standing shirtless in the bathroom, his back to the camera, which must have been hidden. On his right shoulder blade was a growth. It wasn't a mole or a tumor, not like anything I'd ever seen. It was dark, almost purple, and had a strange, convoluted texture, like a piece of coral or wrinkled bark. Even in the poor resolution of the video, I could see a faint, rhythmic pulsation to it. Cut again. The growth was larger now, the size of a fist. It had spread, tendrils of the same dark, veined tissue branching out over his back. My mother's voice, younger but strained with panic, was audible from behind the camera, talking to someone on the phone. "The doctors don't know what it is. They did a biopsy, but the sample, they said it was inert tissue, but it keeps growing. No, it's not cancerous. They said it's not cellular at all." Another jump. A doctor's office. The camera was shaky, probably my mother filming from her lap. A doctor was pointing at a series of x-rays on a light box. "As you can see," the doctor said, his voice clinical and detached, "it doesn't seem to be attached to the bone or the muscular structure. It's almost as if it's superimposed. We've never seen anything like it. It's proliferating at an exponential rate, but we can't identify what it is." The final scene change was the most jarring. The lighting was poor, the room lit by candles. My parents were in a cramped, cluttered room that looked like some back-alley fortune-teller's parlor. An old woman with a face like a dried apple sat across from them. Incense smoke curled in the air. "It is not a sickness," the old woman said, her voice a reedy whisper. "It is a seed. Passenger. It fell from a cold star and found a warm place to root. It eats. It grows. That is all it knows. Can you remove it?" My father asked, his voice raw with desperation. The old woman shook her head slowly. "To remove it is to kill you. It is part of you now. Its roots are in your blood, your heart. It will consume you. And when it is done with you, it will keep growing. It will consume everything." "What can we do?" my mother's voice pleaded. "Its hunger can be sated," the mystic said, her dark eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Bargained with. It needs life. Not the life it is attached to, but new life. Small offerings and it will slow the growth. It will keep it dormant. You feed the one, or it will feed on the many." The video cut to static, but the audio continued. It was my mother's voice, older now, recorded over the static. A narration, a confession. "He wouldn't do it," she said, her voice flat and dead, the voice I'd known my whole life. "Your father, he was a good man. He said he'd rather die. And he did. The growth, it took him over. It didn't just cover him, it absorbed him, changed him, but it was still him in there somewhere. And it was still hungry, kept growing. It would have filled the house, the street, the town. The old woman was right. So I made a choice. I put it in the basement. I locked the door. And I fed it. I chose. I looked at the bedside table where she had passed. The key was still there where she'd left it. A single, old-fashioned skeleton key, its brass tarnished with age and use. My hand was steady as I picked it up. There was no choice, was there? There was only duty. The legacy she'd left me. I walked to the kitchen and opened the door to the basement. The air that rose to meet me was thick, heavy, and cold. It smelled of damp earth, mildew, and that cloying, sickly sweet scent, much stronger now, coated the back of my throat. I flipped the switch, and a single bare bulb at the bottom of the stairs flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. Each wooden step groaned under my weight. The basement was unfinished, with a concrete floor and stone walls that wept with moisture. It was filled with the junk of a lifetime, old furniture under white sheets like sleeping ghosts, boxes of forgotten belongings, my old toys. But I only had eyes for the door at the far end of the room. It was just as I remembered, but worse. The wood was dark and stained, warped from the damp. A strange, dark mold crept out from the edges of the frame. The deadbolt was thick and rusted. I could see deep, long scratches on the wood, gouges that seemed to start from about waist high. From the inside, my heart was screaming against my ribs. The key felt like a block of ice in my palm. This was it, the heart of the house, the source of the rot that had consumed my family, my town, my entire life. I put the key in the lock. It was stiff, and I had to put my shoulder into it to get it to turn. The thunk of the deadbolt sliding back was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I took a deep breath, the foul air filling my lungs, and pulled the door open. It wasn't a room anymore. The concept of a room, for walls, a floor, a ceiling, was gone. Every surface was covered in a single, contiguous mass of living flesh. It was a pulsating, vein-riddled membrane, the color of a deep bruise, glistening wetly in the dim light of the bare bulb from the main basement. It moved with a slow, rhythmic undulation, like a lung breathing. The sweet, rotten smell was overwhelming, a physical force that made my eyes water. It was a terrarium of nightmare biology, a cancerous womb that had consumed its container. Hanging from the center of the ceiling, suspended by thick, umbilical-like cords of the same flesh, was a shape. It was vaguely humanoid, a torso and limbs all fused into a single tumorous mass. And from the center of that mass, a face looked down at me. The features were distorted, swollen, but I recognized them from the home video. The shape of the jaw, the line of the nose, and the eyes. They were his eyes, open, aware, and filled with an ancient, bottomless hunger. It didn't make a sound. It didn't have to. As our gazes met, a thought bloomed in my mind. A voice that was not a voice. A feeling that was not my own. It was a simple, primal, all-consuming concept that echoed through every cell of my being. Hungry. I stood frozen in the doorway, the key cold in my hand, my mind a blank slate of pure terror. As I watched, paralyzed, a tendril of the flesh on the wall nearest to me began to move. It wasn't fast, but it was deliberate. It elongated, stretching out from the wall, a new vein pulsing to life along its length. It grew before my very eyes, reaching for me across the threshold. It had been months, maybe even years since the last time my mother had been able to walk down these stairs. Years since its last meal. The hunger was a screaming, physical agony that I could feel radiating from the creature in waves. I closed my eyes, and a slideshow of faces flashed against the darkness of my eyelids. The boy who loved video games. The one who could draw. The quiet shadow. All the little brothers. I saw their faces not as they were when they were with me, full of hope and a cautious trust, but as they must have been in their final moments, staring into the same pulsing, hungry abyss. My breath hitched. My entire life had been a lie built on top of a horror I could never have imagined. I was the son of a monster, the son of a warden, and now the choice my mother made all those years ago was mine. I took a step back, pulling the warped door shut. The tendril of flesh slapped against the wood on the other side. A wet, insistent sound. I turned the key, and the deadbolt shot home with a deafening crack of finality. I walked up the stairs, through the kitchen, and out the front door of the silent, rotting house. I didn't look back. The evening air of my dying town felt cool on my face. The streetlights cast long, orange stripes on the cracked pavement. I know what I have to do. I have to be the strong one now. I have to stop its growth. But first, I have to feed him. I shoved my hands in my pockets and started walking, my footsteps echoing in the empty street. I walked towards the glow of the downtown lights, towards the bus station, towards the overpass, towards the parts of town where the lost kids always seem to congregate. And as I write this now, after my first new little brother has gone, I feel it in my chest. The weight my mother carried for her whole life. I work on a deep-sea oil rig. I think we woke something up. There is a sound you never stop hearing when working on an oil rig. It's a low hum, a vibration that travels up through your steel-toed boots, passes through your knees, and lodges itself at the base of your skull. It is, in fact, the routine drone of 3 house-sized diesel generators, of mud pumps working at colossal pressure, and of the drill bit grinding rock kilometers below. You learn to sleep with this sound. You learn to eat while hearing it. The real trouble begins when the sound stops. My name is Elias. I am a senior drilling engineer on the Vanguard 7 platform. We are anchored 280 miles off the Brazilian coast, on the frontier of the pre-salt layer, in an area geology calls the unmapped abyssal zone. The Vanguard is no ordinary rig. It is an ultra-deep-water unit, a floating city of rusted steel and cutting-edge technology, supported by 4 colossal columns descending into the blue darkness. We've been here for 6 months. The mission was simple: reach a theoretical oil pocket detected by seismic satellites. A reserve so deep no one had the courage or the stupidity to try reaching before. We tried, and, God help us, we succeeded. It all started 3 days ago during the graveyard shift. I was in the control cabin monitoring the drill telemetry. We were at 9,000 meters depth. We had passed the salt layer, we had passed the bedrock. The monitor showed the rock resistance. 100, 100, 100. And then 0. The resistance dropped to 0 in a microsecond. The drill string, weighing tons, jolted forward as if it had fallen into an empty hole. Loss of circulation, shouted Chagas, the mud operator. Pressure dropped. We're losing fluid. Pull back the drill, I ordered, slamming the emergency button. Close the BOP. The BOP, blowout preventer, is a giant valve on the seafloor designed to shear the pipe and seal the well if pressure explodes. It is our only defense against a disaster. But there was no explosion, no gas rising. There was only suction. The crane's tension gauge spiked. The drill string wasn't loose. Something was pulling it down. The entire platform groaned. Steel twisting. The horizon tilted 2 degrees. What the hell is that? Chagas was pale. Are we snagged? No. I looked at the monitors. The bit is still turning. But the torque reading is insane. It's like we're drilling through rubber. We fought the machine for 2 hours. Finally, the tension gave way. We managed to pull the string back. When the bit reached the surface at the moon pool in the center of the rig, we expected to see the bit destroyed, diamond teeth shattered by granite. But the bit was intact, covered in a substance. It wasn't oil. Oil is black, brown, or golden. It smells of hydrocarbons. The thing covering the bit was violet. A thick, bioluminescent slime that pulsed slightly under the industrial floodlights. And the smell. It didn't smell like fuel. It smelled of copper, of iron. It smelled like warm blood. And underneath that, a scent of lilies rotting in the sun. What is this? Asked Mateus, the intern geologist. He approached, fascinated, a scraper in hand. Some kind of compressed algae? Don't touch that, kid, I warned. Biohazard protocol. But Mateus was fast. He scraped a piece of the slime onto a plate. The substance moved. It didn't flow. It contracted, fleeing the metal of the scraper, and clustered in the center of the plate, vibrating. It's alive, whispered Chagas. We took the sample to the lab. Meanwhile, the atmosphere on the platform changed. The sea, which had been rough with 3-meter waves, standard for this region, began to calm. Not just calm. It stopped. Within an hour, the Atlantic Ocean turned into a mirror. No waves. No foam. A sheet of black glass extending to infinity. The sky turned cloudy, but there was no wind. The company flag atop the derrick stopped fluttering. The silence of the sea was wrong. The ocean breathes. The ocean never stops. But in that moment, it did. I went to the lab to see Mateus's analysis. I found the kid sitting on the floor, staring at the electron microscope. He was shaking. Elias, he said without looking at me. This isn't oil. It isn't a fossil. What is it? I asked. It's blood plasma, copper-based hemoglobin. White blood cells the size of tennis balls. He turned his chair. His face was bathed in sweat. Elias, we didn't drill a well. We drilled a vein. I laughed nervously. Don't be ridiculous. A vein at 9,000 meters depth? Of what? Godzilla. I was joking. Mateus didn't laugh. The volume, based on the pressure we measured when the bit broke the barrier, the systolic pressure. Elias, the body this belongs to is the size of a continent. The gas alarm blared. It wasn't methane. It was the hydrogen sulfide sensor, deadly and corrosive. I ran to central control. Where's the leak? I shouted. It's not an internal leak, the radio operator replied. It's coming from outside. It's coming from the water. I went out to the deck. The water around the platform had changed color. The deep black had given way to a milky, iridescent purple. The slime was rising from the hole we made, spreading across the surface like an oil slick, but glowing with its own light. And there were bubbles. Gigantic bubbles breached the surface with a wet, obscene sound. With every bubble that burst, a yellowish mist spread. Masks, I ordered over the PA. Everyone on respirators. Now. We spent the next 12 hours locked inside the habitat modules. The air filtration system was working at maximum, but that sweet, metallic smell seeped through the filters. That was when the strange behaviors started. Chagas, a man who had worked at sea for 30 years, tough as nails, started crying in the galley. It's awake, he repeated, rocking back and forth. We pricked it. We woke it up. Who, Chagas? I asked. The bottom. The floor. It's not a floor. It never was a floor. Its skin. I tried to call for help. The radio was dead. Pure static. The satellite phones had no signal. We were isolated. At 3 a.m. on the second day, the platform shook. It wasn't a wave. It was an impact coming from below. I ran to the bridge window. The floodlights illuminated the purple water. And I saw it. Rising from the water, clinging to one of the platform's support columns, was something. It looked like a crab, but it was white, translucent, and the size of a van. It had no eyes, just long antennae feeling the rusted metal of the column. And it wasn't alone. There were dozens of them, hundreds, swarming up Vanguard's legs like lice crawling up an arm. "What are those things?" shouted the commander, a Norwegian named Larsen. "Antibodies," came Matthias's voice from behind us. The kid was at the bridge door holding a flare. "We are the infection," Matthias said with a sad smile. "We pierced the skin. We injected metal and toxic mud. The organism is reacting. It sent the white blood cells to clean the wound." "Clean the wound?" I asked. "We are the wound, Elias." One of the antibodies reached the main deck. I watched through the security cameras as it crushed a steel container like aluminum foil. The claws weren't made of bone. They looked like crystal or diamond. It grabbed a crew member who hadn't made it to the shelter. The man screamed as he was torn in half. There was no blood. The crab didn't eat the man. It just crushed him and tossed the pieces into the sea, like someone wiping away dirt. They were sterilizing the area. "We have to abandon the rig," Larsen screamed. "To the lifeboats." "No!" I grabbed his arm. "Look outside. The boats are 30 meters above the water. If we lower them, those things will grab the cables. And if we fall into the water, into that slime, then what do we do?" he asked. "We fight," I said, though I didn't believe it. What followed was a nightmare of metal and screams. We armed ourselves with whatever we had. Fire axes, flare guns, iron bars. But how do you fight a planet's immune system? They invaded the drill floor. They toppled the derrick. The sound of twisting steel was deafening. The platform was being dismantled piece by piece. I ran to the BOP control room. I had a plan. A stupid, suicidal plan. If that was a vein, if we were causing pain, maybe we could staunch the bleeding. I would shear the pipe at the seabed and seal the hole with cement. Maybe if we stopped pricking the thing, the reaction would stop. The path to the BOP control was infested. I saw Chagas get taken. He didn't run. He walked toward one of the white monsters, arms open. "I am the virus," he shouted. "Cure me." The creature's claw closed around his head. I reached the control room. I locked the armored steel door. I heard claws scraping outside. The metal was giving way. I went to the panel. The system was offline. Main power had been cut when the derrick fell. Shit! I need emergency power. The auxiliary generator was in the module's basement. I had to go down. The corridor was dark, lit only by red emergency lights. The floor was tilted. The platform was sinking. One of the support pillars must have already given way. I reached the generator. Purple slime was leaking through the vents. The smell was so strong I retched every 2 steps. I cranked the manual starter. The engine coughed and caught. The lights flickered. The BOP panel lit up. I ran back to the screen. Well pressure. Critical. Connection status. Unstable. I put my hand on the button. I hesitated. If I did this, the drill string would be cut. The well would be sealed. But what if Matthias was right? What if this was a conscious entity? Would it understand that we stopped? Or would it continue until it eliminated the last trace of us? The control room door exploded. One of the antibodies entered. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Translucent, glowing with internal light, visible organs pulsing blue. It didn't roar. It just clicked its mandibles. I pressed the button. I felt the vibration in the floor. Down below, at 9,000 meters, 2 hardened steel blades sheared the drill pipe and closed the valve. The flow of blood stopped. The creature stopped. It raised its antennae. It seemed to listen. Outside, the noise of destruction lessened. The platform stopped shaking. The creature looked at me. Its eyeless sensors focused on my beating chest. Took a step back. Then another. Turned and left the room. I ran to the window. They were retreating. Hundreds of white creatures were descending the platform legs, returning to the purple sea. They dove and disappeared. The blood in the water began to dissolve, dissipating in the current. We sat in silence for hours. The platform was ruined. Listing 15 degrees, no derrick, no main power. Half the crew was dead. But we were alive. The body of that thing had stopped the immune response. At dawn, rescue arrived. Navy helicopters. They saw the destruction. They saw the crushed bodies. But we lied. It was a silent pact among the survivors. It was a gas explosion, Larson said. A giant methane bubble. The structure collapsed. And the bodies torn in half? The falling derrick. The pressure. No one mentioned the purple blood. No one mentioned the white crabs. Because if we told the truth, they would come back. The company would come back. They would bring bigger drills, weapons. They would try to harvest the blood. And if you try to kill a planet, the planet kills you back. I was retired on disability. Post-traumatic stress. I live inland now. Mine is Jure. We thought the Earth was a rock covered in water and life. We were wrong. The Earth is the organism. We are just the bacteria living on the husk. And I know that somewhere in the ocean the wound has healed. But the scar remains. And she knows where we are. She knows we are parasites. And I am terrified of the day she decides to take an antibiotic. Because I saw her white blood cells. And they don't stop until the infection is eradicated. I wasted 6 years failing at everything I tried to build. Today I broke down in front of my dad, and his words changed everything. I've been trying to build my own thing for the last 6 years. While my friends were getting promoted, buying cars, and traveling, I was sitting in my room, staring at failed codes and rejected ideas. Honestly, I was done. I felt like a loser. I felt like I was burdening my family. Today I sat with my dad and finally let it out. I told him, Dad, I can't do this anymore. I think I should just quit and find a normal job. I wasted 6 important years of my life. My dad, who usually doesn't talk much about emotions, looked at me and said something that hit me harder than any motivational video. He said, Son, those 6 years weren't wasted. They were invested. After every mistake, you learned something new, right? I nodded. He continued, Listen, nothing in this world is stronger than you. What belongs to you will come to you. It's not going anywhere. You just have to keep working hard. You've put 6 years into this. If you step back now, that would be the actual failure. You've survived the learning phase. Now is the time to grow. That line, if you step back now, that would be the actual failure, woke me up. I realized I wasn't starting from scratch. I was starting from experience. So, I'm wiping my tears and getting back to work. I'm giving it one more try. Not for the world, but for that belief my dad has in me. Just wanted to share this for anyone else feeling like giving up. Your hard work isn't wasted. It's just being stored for the right time. Boss asked me to hide his secrets. I bet they don't ask me again. I work in the XXXREDACTDXXX. My company's CEO has been trying to keep everybody from learning a pretty terrible secret he's been keeping. Most of his closest allies know the secret, but just don't care because he's been shoveling money and power to them. Not from his own wallet, mind you. He's been selling off company assets, but using the money to basically bribe people. So, basically, he's surrounded by people he's bought. But he's been lying to the board and to the public this whole time. Well, funny thing about that, this scandal he's been caught up in, which he's been lying about, he's been accusing the previous CEO and pretty much everybody else of being involved. He even has been threatening to release all the info for like a year or two. Well, now, the board is actually demanding that he release everything. And it all points back to him. So, this is where I come in. I'm just a tech guy who has to assemble technical documents and pass them along to lawyers and the board. My CEO and his buddies sent me all this crap. But instead of just sending it off as is my job, they told me to blank out any references to the current CEO. And if it comes out that I covered up a lie, guess who is going to get tossed under the bus? Well, fuck that. Fortunately, these are not the brightest bulbs or sharpest knives. They think they are, but honestly, these are just privileged dipshits, most of whom haven't had to work a day in their lives. Born on third base and think they hit a triple. So, knowing that I work for a bunch of dipshits, I had to figure out a way to blank out all this crap, but not actually remove anything which might get me into trouble. And, TBH, it's not even about me getting in trouble. I mean, FUCK those guys. Stealing from the company while we all get no Christmas bonus and no raise, and then all the actually criminal shit. Fuck them all the way up. So, I comply with the request. I blank out all the lines and pages. Lots of whole pages of troublesome text. But, get this, instead of just simply deleting it, I highlight the black text and make the background black. It looks like I deleted it, especially when you print it. But, anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together will very quickly realize they can just select the text and read everything. Right now, I'm just sitting back and waiting for someone important to notice. I have a bucket of popcorn. Wish me luck. My father had one rule. We were forbidden from acknowledging my mother. I broke it, and now I understand why. I need to start from the beginning. I need to try and make sense of it, for my own sake. For as long as I can remember, my life has been governed by one unbreakable rule. It was never spoken aloud, never written down, never explained. It was a rule learned through punishing silence, through the sharp, warning glances of my father, through a pressure in the atmosphere so thick you could feel it on your skin. The rule was simple: we do not acknowledge her. She was my mother. She lived in the house with us. She was as solid and real as the dining table we sat at every night, or the stairs I climbed to my bedroom. But to my father, and by extension to me, she was a ghost we had agreed not to see. Every morning, she would be in the kitchen when I came down for breakfast. She'd be at the stove, a floral apron tied around her waist, and she would turn and smile at me. It was always a sad smile, one that never quite reached her eyes. "Good morning, sweetheart," she would say, her voice soft, like rustling leaves. And every morning, I would look right through her, my gaze fixed on the coffee pot on the counter behind her. I'd grab a bowl from the cupboard, pour my own cereal, and sit at the table. My father would already be there, hidden behind his newspaper, a silent monolith. She would sigh, a tiny, deflated sound, and place a third plate on the table between us, a plate of scrambled eggs or pancakes, always cooked perfectly, always destined to grow cold. We would eat our breakfast in silence, the only sounds the scrape of spoons against ceramic and the rustle of my father's paper. The third plate sat there, a testament to our collective delusion, a steaming, fragrant accusation. She would sit in her chair, her hands clasped in her lap, watching us eat, a hopeful, desperate look on her face. Sometimes she would try to start a conversation. "It looks like it might rain today," she'd offer, her voice wavering slightly. "You should take an umbrella to school." My father would just turn a page, the crinkle of the newsprint sharp and dismissive in the quiet room. I would take a large, noisy bite of my cereal, focusing on the crunch, on anything but the sound of her voice. After a while, she would just fall silent, the hope draining from her face, leaving behind that familiar, deep-seated sadness. Dinner was the same. She'd cook a full meal, something that smelled incredible, filling the house with the scent of roasted chicken or baking bread. She'd set 3 places at the table, complete with napkins and silverware. My father and I would sit, and she would serve us, placing food on our plates, her movements graceful and practiced. Then she would sit down, fill her own plate, and try to engage us. "How was your day at work?" she would ask my father. He would grunt, his attention fixed on cutting his meat into precise geometric shapes. "And school? Did you have that big test today?" she would ask me. I would mumble something non-committal, my eyes glued to my plate, shoveling food into my mouth to avoid having to speak. The charade was suffocating. It was a constant, exhausting performance. Every single day was a rehearsal and a live show of pretending this woman, my own mother, did not exist. I grew up in a house with 3 people, but I was raised in a world that only acknowledged 2. For years, I just accepted it. Kids accept the most bizarre circumstances as normal because it's all they've ever known. The sun rises, the sky is blue, and we don't talk to mom. It was just a fact of life. I learned to tune her out, to blur her form at the edges of my vision. She became a piece of the background, like a painting on the wall you no longer notice. But as I got older, moving into my late teens and then my early 20s, the acceptance began to curdle into something else. First it was confusion, then a deep, gnawing guilt. I started to really look at her. I saw the fine lines of sorrow etched around her eyes. I saw the way her shoulders slumped when we ignored her, the way she would sometimes touch the back of my father's chair as she passed, a longing for contact that was never returned. I saw a woman who was profoundly, devastatingly lonely, trapped in her own home. My perception of my father shifted, too. The silent, stoic man I had once seen as a protector started to look like a tyrant. His rule was strange, cruel. It was a calculated, daily act of emotional violence. What had she done to deserve this? Had she had an affair? Had she done something unforgivable that I was too young to remember? Whatever it was, this punishment seemed monstrously out of proportion. It was a cold, quiet form of torture, and he had made me his accomplice. The resentment built slowly, a pressure behind my ribs. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed and hear the faint sounds of her weeping from their bedroom. It was a soft, muffled sound, the kind of crying you do when you're trying not to wake anyone, and it broke my heart. How could my father lie beside her every night, hear that, and do nothing? What kind of man was he? I began to see his actions as a grotesque form of misogyny, an exertion of absolute control. He had erased her. He had stripped her of her voice, her presence, her very existence within the family she had built. And I had helped him. Every silent breakfast, every ignored question, I was tightening the screws. The breaking point came last Tuesday. It was a miserable, rainy day, the kind that makes the whole world feel gray and damp. I was in the living room, trying to read, but the words just swam on the page. She came in and stood by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She wasn't trying to talk to me. She was just standing there, looking out at the world she was a part of but couldn't seem to touch. She started humming. A simple, sad little lullaby. It was a melody that felt vaguely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. I felt a lump form in my throat. I watched her reflection in the dark window pane, a translucent figure against the storm-tossed trees outside. Her shoulders were shaking almost imperceptibly. She was crying again, silently. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up guilt, of quiet rebellion, of love for this woman I wasn't allowed to know. All of it came rushing to the surface. It was wrong. This whole thing, this whole life was fundamentally, grotesquely wrong. I couldn't be a part of it anymore. I waited. I waited until I heard my father's car pull out of the driveway for his weekly trip to the hardware store. It was a ritual for him every Tuesday evening, a couple of hours to himself. The house fell into a new kind of silence, one that wasn't enforced but was simply empty. Except it wasn't empty. She was still there. I found her in the kitchen, washing the dinner dishes, her back to me. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I felt like she must be able to hear it. My mouth was dry. It felt like I was about to break a law of physics, like the universe itself might fracture if I spoke. I took a deep breath. Mom! The word felt alien in my mouth, heavy and clumsy. She froze. Her hands, submerged in the soapy water, went completely still. The silence that followed was more profound than any I had ever experienced in that house. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Slowly, she turned around. Her face was a mask of disbelief. Her eyes, wide and glistening with tears, were locked on mine. She looked at me as if she were seeing a miracle. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She just stared, her expression shifting from shock to a dawning, radiant joy that was so pure it was painful to watch. You can see me," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. "Oh, my sweet boy, you can finally see me." Her words confused me. They landed strangely, not quite fitting the situation. I took a step closer. "What are you talking about?" I said, my own voice unsteady. "I've always seen you. I see you every day." Her brow furrowed in confusion, but the smile didn't leave her face. It was as if she couldn't bear to let it go. "But you never looked at me. You never spoke." "Dad," I said, the word tasting like poison. "It was him. He told me not to. It was his rule. I was a kid, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. But I'm not a kid anymore. And it's wrong. What he's doing to you is wrong." Understanding washed over her face, followed by a shadow of that old sadness. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was cold, surprisingly so, like marble that had been left in a cellar. But her grip was firm. "Real. Your father," she began, her voice trailing off. She shook her head. "He's had a hard time. He does what he thinks is best. But it's okay now. It's okay. This can be our secret, can't it? Just between us." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The relief that flooded me was immense, like I'd been holding my breath my entire life and had finally been allowed to exhale. We stood there for a long time, just holding hands in the quiet kitchen. She told me how much she loved me, how she had watched me grow up, proud of the man I was becoming. She asked me about school, about my friends, about my life. It was a torrent of questions, years of unspoken love and curiosity pouring out of her. We talked until we heard the sound of my father's car on the gravel driveway. A sudden panic seized us. She squeezed my hand one last time, a conspiratorial smile on her face. "Our secret," she whispered, and then she turned back to the sink, resuming her washing as if nothing had happened. I bolted from the kitchen, my heart racing, and made it to my room just as the front door opened. The rest of the evening passed in the usual suffocating silence, but this time, it felt different. It was charged with my secret. When she looked at me across the dinner table, there was a new light in her eyes, a shared knowledge. It was the first time in my life I felt like I had an ally in that house. We continued our secret conversations for the next few days. Whenever my father was out, we would talk. I learned about her favorite books, the music she loved, the places she dreamed of traveling. She was vibrant and intelligent and funny. She was a whole person, a person my father had tried to bury, and with every word we shared, I felt like I was helping her claw her way out of the grave he'd dug for her. My anger at him grew with every passing day. He was a monster, a quiet, methodical monster who had stolen my mother from me. I started to think about what to do. Should I confront him? Should I just take her and leave? I felt a fierce, protective instinct I'd never known before. I would not let him hurt her anymore. Then came yesterday morning. I woke up and the house was silent. Too silent. There was no smell of coffee brewing. No sound of my father's radio murmuring the morning news from the kitchen. I lay in bed for a while, waiting, but the silence stretched, becoming unnatural, unnerving. I finally got up and went downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The coffee pot was cold. The newspaper was still on the front porch. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. I checked the whole ground floor. No one. I went upstairs and knocked on their bedroom door. No answer. I pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. My father's side of the closet was open, his clothes hanging in their usual meticulous rows. Her side was the same. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the absence of them was a screaming void. Panic started to set in. I checked the garage. His car was gone. My first thought was that he'd left early for work. But he never did that without telling me. And where was she? Did he take her somewhere? The thought sent a jolt of fear through me. Had he found out about our secret? I spent the whole day in a state of escalating anxiety. I called my father's cell phone a dozen times. It went straight to voicemail every time. I called his office. His secretary said he hadn't shown up, which had never happened before. I didn't know who to call about her. She didn't have a cell phone. She didn't have any friends that I knew of. Her entire world was contained within the walls of our house. By evening, I was frantic. I paced the empty rooms, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Had he hurt her? Had he taken her away to punish her? To punish me? The darkest possibilities began to spiral in my mind. I had to do something. I had to find a clue, anything that could tell me where they went. My search led me back to their bedroom. It felt like a violation to be in there, to go through their things, but I was desperate. I looked through drawers under the bed, in the closet. Nothing. It was just a room, unnaturally tidy and impersonal. Then I saw it. On the floor of my father's closet, tucked behind a row of shoes, was a small wooden chest. I'd never seen it before. It was unlocked. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were journals. A stack of them, all identical black, leather-bound notebooks. The kind my father used for work. I pulled out the one on top. His neat, precise handwriting filled the page. The first entry was dated over 15 years ago. I sat on the edge of their bed, the scent of his cologne still faint on the pillows, and I began to read. October 12th. It's been a year since the accident. The house feels so empty, a hollowed-out shell. I look at my son, and I see her eyes, and the pain is so fresh it's like it happened yesterday. He's only 3, too young to understand. He just asks for mama. How do I explain to a 3-year-old that she's never coming back? The police report called it a freak accident. A downed power line in the storm. Wrong place, wrong time. It doesn't feel like a freak accident. It feels like a theft. The world has stolen her from us. My blood ran cold. I read the entry again and then a third time. An accident? She died? No. It was impossible. I had just spoken to her yesterday. I had held her hand. It was a mistake. A different journal. Something. But it was his handwriting, his room. I kept reading. A sense of dread coiling in my stomach. May 3rd, 2 years later. He did it again today. He was playing in the living room with his blocks, and he just stopped and pointed towards the kitchen. He said, "Mama is making cookies." I went in, of course. The kitchen was empty. I told him Mama was in heaven, like we've practiced. He just shook his head. "No, she's right there," he said, and he described her. He described the yellow dress she was buried in. I felt a coldness spread through me that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. He's 5. His imagination is running wild. That's all it is. May 28th. It's not his imagination. He talks to her every day now. I've started to see glimpses, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye when he says she's walking past. A faint scent of her perfume in a room she supposedly just left. This morning I was in the hall, and he was in his room, chattering away. I asked who he was talking to. "Mama," he said. "She's singing me a song." And then I heard it, faintly through the door. A lullaby, the one she used to sing to him. I almost threw up. June 15th. I confronted it today. My son was sitting on the sofa, talking to the empty space next to him. I stood in the doorway and I said her name. I asked her what she wanted. My son looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. And the air in the room grew heavy, cold. A pressure built against my eardrums. I felt a sense of malevolence, of pure hatred, directed at me. It looked like her. It sounded like her. But when I forced myself to look at the spot my son was staring at, I saw it. Just for a second. The shape of her was there, but the eyes were black pits. Empty and ancient and wrong. This thing is not my wife. My wife is gone. This is something else, a parasite wearing her memory. My breath hitched in my chest. I felt a wave of nausea. This was insane. He was insane. He was grieving, he had gone mad. That had to be it. I gripped the journal tighter, my knuckles white. July 1st. I've tried everything. Priests, mediums, paranormal investigators. They either think I'm crazy or they leave the house pale and shaken, telling me they can't help me. One of them told me it's a mimic, a shade. He said it's drawn to the grief, to my son's energy, and it seems it will never leave us. Even if we left this place, it will just follows. He said the worst thing we can do is give it what it wants, acknowledgement. Attention is sustenance. Recognition is power. If we feed it, it will grow stronger. It will latch onto him. It will consume him. So I have a plan. It's a terrible, cruel plan. It will make my son hate me. It will make me a monster in his eyes. But it's the only way I can think of to protect him. We have to starve it. We have to pretend it isn't there. We have to cut off its food supply. We will not look at it. We will not speak to it. We will not acknowledge its existence. We will live in a house with a ghost and pretend we are alone. May God forgive me for what I am about to do to my own child. The journal fell from my hands, landing with a soft thud on the carpet. The room was spinning. Every memory of my childhood, every silent dinner, every sharp glance from my father, it all rearranged itself in my mind into a new and terrifying picture. I scrambled for the last journal, the one from this year. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely turn the pages. I found an entry from last week. Tuesday. He spoke to it tonight. I knew it was coming. I've seen the way he's been looking at it lately. The guilt in his eyes. He thinks I'm the villain. I suppose I am. I would rather he hate me and be safe than love me and be lost. But now he's broken the rule. He's opened the door. When I came home, the air in the house was different. Thicker, charged. And it looked stronger, more solid. The sadness in its eyes has been replaced by something else. Triumph. I have to end this. The old man, the one who called it a mimic, he gave me a final option. A last resort. He said if it ever got a true foothold, if it ever fed enough to become fully anchored here, there was a ritual. A way to bind it. But it requires a sacrifice. A trade. An anchor for an anchor. He told me it would probably kill me. But what life have I been living anyway? A jailer in my own home. Hated by my own son. If this is the price to set him free, I will pay it. He's talking to it again. I can hear them whispering in the kitchen. I love you, my son. I hope one day you'll understand. I hope you'll forgive me. That was the last entry. So his disappearance and the car being gone. He went to perform the ritual. To sacrifice himself. To save me from the thing he said it took my mother form. My blood turned to ice water. I thought of her hand in mine. How cold her skin was. I thought of her words. You can finally see me. As if my sight was something to be earned. I thought of her triumphant eyes across the dinner table. And then I heard it. A soft, sweet sound from the bottom of the stairs. Humming. That strange little tune she was humming by the window. A floorboard creaked in the hall downstairs. Then another. I scrambled off the bed, my body acting on pure instinct, and threw the lock on the bedroom door. The click sounded deafeningly loud in the silence. I backed away from the door, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. My eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape that wasn't there. The window was 2 stories up. Her footsteps were on the stairs now. Slow, deliberate. Not the light, almost soundless way she used to move. These steps had weight. They had substance. She was stronger now. I had made her stronger. The humming stopped right outside the door. Sweetheart. Her voice. It was my mother's voice, but it was different. It was coated in a thick, cloying sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Are you in there?" I was so worried. I woke up and the house was empty. I pressed myself against the far wall, my hand over my mouth to stifle my own ragged breathing. "I talked to your father," she called through the door. The sound was so clear, it was like she was standing right next to me. "He called. He's so sorry, honey, for everything." He explained it all. "He knows he was wrong to keep us apart." My mind screamed, "Liar, liar. He's gone. You know he's gone. He said he just needs a few days to clear his head," the sweet voice continued. "But he gave us his blessing. He wants us to finally have time together. Just you and me. Isn't that wonderful?" Silence. I held my breath, praying she would think I wasn't here, that she would just go away. "I know you're in there, honey. I can feel you," she cooed. "Come on, open the door. I'm gonna make you some pancakes. Just like I used to." She never used to make me pancakes. "Please, son? Don't shut me out again. Not after you finally let me in. It's all gonna be okay now. I'm here. I'll take care of you. We'll be a proper family." The words hung in the air, thick and venomous. A silence followed, stretching for a few agonizing heartbeats. Then, a new sound. A soft, metallic scrape. The doorknob began to jiggle. Slowly at first, then with more force. Click, rattle, click. My breath caught in my throat. It was trying to get in. It was physically trying to reach me. I backed away until my shoulders hit the cold wall, my eyes wide and fixed on the trembling brass knob. The wood around the lock groaned under the pressure. My phone was in my pocket. The weight of it was a sudden, desperate comfort. My hands were slick with sweat as I fumbled to pull it out. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. What could I possibly say? "There's a woman in my house who looks and sounds like my mother, but my dad's journals say she died 15 years ago, and this thing is a mimic that feeds on attention." They would send an ambulance with a straitjacket, not a squad car with armed officers. The rattling stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Profound, terrifying quiet. And then, a new sound began. A soft, rhythmic scratching on the other side of the door. Like long fingernails dragging slowly, deliberately, down the grain of the wood. Scrape, scrape, over and over. A sound that was patient and possessive. That was it. I didn't care how crazy I sounded. I stabbed the call button. A calm voice answered, 911, what's your emergency? I cupped my hand over the phone's speaker, my own voice a choked, ragged whisper. There's an intruder in my house. I'm locked in my bedroom, upstairs. Can you describe them, sir? The dispatcher asked, her voice perfectly level. The scratching continued, a counterpoint to her professional calm. I can't. I haven't seen them. I just hear them. They're right outside my door. Please, you have to hurry. There was a fractional pause on the other end. A unit is on its way, sir. Can you stay on the line with me? No, I whispered. My eyes locked on the door. I can't make any noise. I ended the call before she could protest. The scratching stopped the instant the call disconnected. As if it heard. As if it knew. The silence that rushed back in was somehow heavier, more menacing than before. It's waiting. It knows I've called for help. It knows its time might be limited. Or maybe it's just enjoying this. I'm trapped in this room. I've called the police, and I don't know if they can even do anything. I don't know what they'll find when they arrive. What if it's just gone when they get here? They'll find my dad's journals. They'll see the state I'm in, and they'll think I'm the one who's broken. But all I can do is wait for them. I'm writing this down, getting it all out as fast as I can on my phone. I need someone to know the truth. I need you to know what really happened, in case they don't believe me. In case something bad happens to me before they get here. Customer tried returning shoes they'd clearly worn for 2 years. Working retail at a shoe store. Customer comes in with a pair of shoes, receipt from 2 years ago wanting a full refund. The shoes were destroyed. Soles completely worn down. Laces dirty and frayed. You could tell these had been worn daily for months, probably longer. Customer claimed they were defective. Said the quality was false advertising and they should have lasted longer. I explained our return policy is 30 days and these shoes were clearly used extensively. Not defective, just worn out from normal use over 2 years. They immediately threatened to sue for false advertising. Started getting loud about how they were a loyal customer and this was unacceptable. Manager came over, looked at the shoes, looked at the receipt and gave them brand new shoes anyway. Full exchange. No charge. Customer left happy. I stood there wondering why we even have policies if we're not going to enforce them. Asked my manager about it later and he said it was easier to give them $80 worth of shoes than deal with a scene and potential complaint to corporate. So apparently if you're loud enough and threaten legal action, return policies don't apply. Good to know. Went home and just crashed on the couch playing Grizzly's Quest for the rest of the night. Still pissed off about it. My sister's teacher left the rudest comments under her exams until my dad put him in his place. My sister, right now in 10th grade, had this one chemistry teacher everyone either was afraid of or just hated him. At the beginning of his lesson, he always calls a student to come up to the front and then asks them questions about the last lesson in front of the whole class as a revision for everyone, even though most students are getting embarrassed in front of their class because of him. He never lets anyone finish their sentence completely or let them even begin their sentence after some seconds. Meanwhile, my sister, who had extreme mental problems in 8th grade due to a narcissistic friend group, even thought about attempting, now has this teacher in chemistry. She lost track of things in chemistry due to those mental problems and now isn't good at it anymore, since you have to understand the earlier topics to understand the more complex stuff later on. She was extremely afraid of getting picked out to be that student that has to stand in front of the whole class, so my mom decided to arrange a meeting with him so that she and my sister could talk to him about it. During the meeting, he seemed really understanding and said, "Okay, I will not pick you until after the first exam, so that you can focus on studying for that." My sister was relieved to hear that she wouldn't be picked out too soon and was completely fixated on studying for the exam. She spent a long time studying and put in as much effort as possible. When that teacher returned the exams to them, he openly said, "There is one specific person that really could have studied more. I'm really disappointed," in front of the whole class while staring at my sister before handing her the exam. Written on it was a big, red F. My sister was about to cry. She knew the mark was not going to be good, but the fact that he accused her of not studying in front of her whole class and calling her lazy hurt her, obviously. At home, my mom looked at the exam. She was not mad at my sister since she tried her best, but then she saw the comment written right under the mark. There is simply no evidence of basic knowledge from grades 8 to 9. Even the most basic understanding of mathematics is lacking. The exam is therefore utterly inadequate and outrageous. My mom was immediately enraged and said she'd arrange another meeting with him. My dad lifted his hand and said, "This time I'll come along." My father is the type of stubborn guy who has an opinion and sticks with it. Arguing with him is almost impossible, since he has the best arguments. And as soon as he notices he can't think of any more arguments, he just takes his previous arguments and rephrases them, which makes them seem like new arguments. As soon as my parents got to the meeting, my father erupted. He asked the teacher if he enjoys in destroying teenagers' motivation to study, if he likes being the reason why students skip school. My dad and him started arguing until my dad said, "There is simply no evidence of basic pedagogical knowledge. Even the most basic understanding of psychology is lacking. Therefore, the work as a teacher is inadequate and outrageous." My sister's teacher was speechless, even turned a little red. But my parents just got up to leave. After that, the teacher acted completely different and even stopped picking out students at the beginning of the lesson. My girlfriend had a spa day. She didn't come back the same. I thought I was being nice, being the perfect boyfriend who recognized when his partner needed a day of relaxation and pampering. It was a mistake. All of it. And I possess full ownership of that decision. She'd just been so stressed from work. She's in retail, and because of the holidays, the higher-ups had her on deck 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. She complained to me daily about her aching feet and tired brain, And from the moment she uttered her first distress call, the idea hatched in my head. How great would it be, right? The perfect gift. I didn't want to just throw out some generic $20 gift card for some foot soaking in warm water. I wanted to make sure she got a fully exclusive experience. I scoured the internet for a bit. For the first 30 minutes or so, all I could find were cheap, sketchy-looking parlors that I felt my girlfriend had no business with. After some time, however, I found it. Surin Tide. The banner read. Beneath the logo and company photos, they had plastered a long-winded narrative in crisp white lettering over a seductively black backdrop. It is our belief that all stress and aches are brought on by darkness held within the soul and mind of a previously pure vessel. We here at Surin Tide uphold our beliefs to the highest degree, and can assure that you will leave our location with a newfound sense of life and liberty. Our professional team of employees will see to it that not only do you leave happy, you leave satisfied. My eyes left the last word, and the only thing I could think was, wow. I really hope this isn't some kind of happy ending thing. With that thought in mind, I perused the website a bit more. Everything looked to be professional. No signs of criminal activity whatsoever. What did seem criminal to me, however, was the fact that for the full premium package, my pockets would become about $450 lighter. But hey, in my silly little boyfriend mind, as she once called it, expensive equals best. I called the number linked on the website, and a stern-spoken female voice picked up. Surin Tide, where we de-stress best. How can I help you? Yeah, hi. I was just calling about your guys' premium package. There was a pause on the other end while the woman typed on her keyboard. Ah, yes. Donovan, I presume? I see you visited our site recently. Did you have questions about pricing? Would you like to book an appointment? Yes, I would. And wait, did you say Donovan? I was genuinely taken aback by this. It was so casual, so blandly stated. It nearly slipped by me for a moment. Yes, sir. As I said, we noticed you visited our website earlier. We try our best to attract new customers here. Right. So you just... The woman cut me off. Elegantly, though. Almost as if she knew what I had to say wasn't important enough for her time. Did you have a specific time and day in mind for your appointment? Yes, actually. This appointment is for my girlfriend. Let me just check what days she has available. I quickly checked my girlfriend's work calendar, scanning for any off days. As if she saw what I was doing, the woman spoke again. Oh, I will inform you. We are open on Christmas Day. Perfect. Really? That's perfect. Let's do, how about 7 p.m. Christmas Day? Then, I could hear her click-clacking away at her keyboard again. All right, 7 p.m. Christmas it is, then. My girlfriend suddenly burst through my bedroom door, sobbing about her day at work. Out of sheer instinct, I hung up the phone and hurried to comfort her. She was on the brink. I could tell that her days in retail were numbered. I hate it there. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. She pouted as she fought to remove her heels. Pulling her close for a hug and petting her head, all I could think to say was, I know, honey. You don't have to stay much longer. I promise we'll find you a new job. Promise? She replied, eyes wet with tears. Yes, dear. I promise. I felt a light in my heart glow warmer as my beautiful girl pulled me in tighter, burying her face in my chest. She was going to love her gift. Better than that, she needed her gift. We spent the rest of that night cuddled up in bed, watching her favorite show and indulging in some extra buttered popcorn. We had only gotten through maybe half an episode of Mindhunter before she began to snore quietly in my lap. My poor girl was beyond exhausted, and I could tell that she was sleeping hard by the way her body twitched slightly as her breathing grew deeper and deeper. I gave it about 5 or 10 minutes before I decided to move and let her sleep while I got some work done. Sitting down at my computer, the first thing I noticed was the email. A digital receipt from the spa. I found this odd because I had never given them any of my banking information. Checking my account, I found that I was down $481.50. This irritated me slightly. Yes, I had every intention of buying the package. However, nothing was fully agreed upon. I redialed the number, and instead of the stern voice of the woman from earlier, I was greeted by the harsh sound of the dial tone. I had been scammed, or so I thought. I went back to bed with my girlfriend after trying the number 3 more times, resulting in the same outcome each time. Sleep took a while but eventually reached my seething, overthinking brain. I must have been sleeping like a boulder, because when I awoke the next morning, my girlfriend was gone, with a note on her pillow that read, "Got called into work, see you soon," punctuated with a heart and a smiley face. Normally, this would have cleared things up immediately. However, Christmas was my favorite holiday, and I knew what day it was. Her store was closed, and there was no way she would have gone in on Christmas anyway. I felt panic settle in my chest as I launched out of bed and sprinted for the living room. Once there, I found it completely untouched, despite the numerous gifts under our tree. This was a shocking and horrifying realization for me once I learned that our front door had been kicked in, leaving the door handle hanging from its socket. My heart beat out of my chest as I dialed 911 as fast as my thumbs would allow. Despite the fact that my door had clearly been broken and now my girlfriend was gone, the police told me that there was nothing they could do. My girlfriend and I were both adults, and it would take at least 24 to 48 hours before any kind of search party could be considered. I hadn't even begun to think about Surrentide being responsible until I received a notification on my phone. An automated reminder that simply read, "Don't forget, spa appointment. December 25th, 25, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." Those motherfuckers. With the urgency of a heart surgeon, I returned to my computer, ready to take photos of every inch of their company website to forward to the police. Imagine my dismay when I was forced into the tragic reality that the link was now dead, and all that I could find was a gray 404 page and an error sign. Those next 24 hours were like the universe's cruel idea of a joke. The silence. The decorated home that should have been filled with cheer and joy but was instead filled with gloom and dread. And yeah, obviously I tried explaining my situation to the police again. They don't believe the young, I suppose. Told me she probably just got tired of me and went out for fresh air. Told me to try and enjoy the holidays. Threw salt directly into my wounds. By December 26th, I was going on 18 hours without sleep. The police had hesitantly become involved in the case, and my house was being ransacked for evidence by a team of officers. They didn't seem like they wanted to help. They seemed like they wanted to get revenge on me for interrupting their festivities. They had opened every single Christmas gift, rummaged through every drawer and cabinet. I could swear on a Bible that one of them even took some of my snacks, as well as a soda from my fridge. I was too tired to argue against them. Instead, I handed over my laptop and gave them permission to go through my history and emails. I bid them goodbye and sarcastically thanked them for all of their help. Once the last officer was out my door, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and collapsed face first into a pillow, crying gently and slipping into slumber. I was awoken abruptly by the sound of pounding coming from my front door. I rolled out of bed groggily and wiped the sleep from my eyes as I slowly walked towards the sound. As I approached, the knocking ceased suddenly, and I heard footsteps rushing off my front porch. Checking the peephole, all I could see was a solid black van with donut tires and tinted windows burn rubber down my driveway. Opening my door, my fury and grief transformed into pure, unbridled sorrow as my eyes fell upon what they couldn't see from the peephole. In a wheelchair sat before me, dressed in a white robe with a towel still wrapped around her hair, my beautiful girlfriend. She didn't look hurt per se. She looked empty. Her eyes were glazed and glassy, and her mouth hung open as if she didn't have the capacity to close it. Her skin had never looked more beautiful. Blackheads, blemishes, every imperfection had been removed. When I say every imperfection, please believe those words. Even her birthmark had completely disappeared, the one that used to kiss her collar and cradle her neck. God's proof of authenticity, we used to call it. In fact, The only distinguishable mark I could find on her body was a bandage, slightly stained with blood, that covered her forehead. I fought back tears as I reached down to stroke her face. Her eyes slowly rolled towards me before her gaze shifted back into space. I called out her name once, twice, 3 times before she turned her head back in my direction. By this point, I was screaming her name, begging her to respond to me, to which she replied with scattered grunts and heavy breathing. I began shaking her wheelchair, sobbing as I pleaded for her to come back. Her eyes remained distant and hollow. However, as I shook the chair, something that I hadn't noticed previously fell out of her robe. A laminated card, with the ST logo plastered boldly across the top. I bent down to retrieve the card, my heart and mind shattering with each passing moment, and what I read finally pushed me over the edge. Session complete. Thank you for choosing Surintide, and happy holidays from our family to yours. A stranger sat outside my home every night. I finally found out why. It all started when I moved into my new home in late October. It had barely been a week when I saw him for the first time. I was washing dishes when headlights flashed across my front window and stopped. I looked out and saw an older sedan parked directly across the street with the engine still running. Behind the wheel was a man who just sat there staring. I thought it was weird, but I just tried to ignore it. So I went back to washing my dishes. When I finished about 20 minutes later, I checked again and the same man was still sitting there. It was creeping me out, but I had literally just moved into this home and I didn't want to overreact and freak out if it was nothing. So I just closed my curtain and went about my business. A couple hours later, right before I went to bed, I checked again. The car was finally gone. But then the very next night, it happened again. And again the night after that. Every night the same man in the same car would park there and would just sit there for hours. Sometimes he would be writing something, but mostly he was just staring at my home. I told myself not to be dramatic. People sit in cars for all kinds of reasons. Maybe he lived with someone that he was trying to avoid or who didn't want him smoking inside. Or maybe it was just part of some weird routine and my house just happened to be in front of him. One evening, I stepped outside under the pretense of taking out the trash. The man was older, late 60s maybe. He didn't even look my way, just kept staring straight ahead. I called out to him. "Hello," I said. He turned his head then. "Evening," he replied, before turning to stare straight ahead again. He didn't say anything more, so I went back inside. I called the non-emergency police line on the 7th night. I rehearsed the explanation while it rang, trying to make myself sound reasonable. I emphasized that I wasn't accusing anyone of anything, just reporting a strange pattern. A patrol car showed up 20 minutes later. The officer listened, nodded, then walked across the street to speak with him. They talked for maybe 2 minutes. I couldn't hear what was said, but there was no tension or raised voices. After that, the officer came back and told me exactly what I'd already suspected. "He's not doing anything illegal," he said. "He's parked on a public street. He's not approaching your property. He's not recording. He's watching my house," I said. "He says he's keeping an eye on the neighborhood. That's not comforting." "I understand," the officer said, in the tone people use when they're done understanding. "If anything changes, give us a call. In the meantime, maybe keep your curtains closed." As the patrol car pulled away, I watched the man turn his dome light back on and resume writing. That night I couldn't sleep. Every small sound made me jump. At 2 a.m., I finally gave in and Googled the address of my house along with keywords like death, murder, and crime. Nothing came up except normal real estate records. The next day, there was an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Not even my name, just my address. Inside was a handwritten letter. "I'm sorry for frightening you. I know how this must look. Your house used to be my son's, but I never visited him the entire 12 years he lived there. We were estranged because I was a lifelong alcoholic and terrible father to him growing up. He cut me out of his life, and I never made the effort to redeem myself like I should have. He died 6 months ago in an armed robbery at a gas station. He was standing in line waiting to pay when an armed man stormed inside. My son wasn't armed, but another man in line was and pulled out his gun to face the robber. They started shooting at each other and a bullet hit my son and killed him instantly. I sit out there because I can't let go. I'm writing letters to him, things I should have said when he was alive. I'll stop coming by. You deserve peace in your home. I hope you'll be happy there. My hands were shaking as I set the letter down. I looked out my front window. The sedan wasn't there. It didn't show up the next night either, or any night after that. Sometimes I still think about him sitting alone in his car, writing letters that would never be read. I hope he found some kind of peace. I'm still not sure I have. My husband's pick-me coworker. Hi all. I shared my original post in r/Antimum about my husband's coworker Jenny, who tried to recruit me to her MLM/pyramid scheme by insulting me. Even though this wasn't the point of the original post, a lot of the commenters were interested in knowing more about Jenny's pick-me behavior and her obvious interest in my husband. So I've compiled a list of shit she's said and done over the 5 years I've known her. Some of it is pick-me, some of it is just weird, all of it is loser behavior. For context, I, 32F, have been with husband Tristan, 36M, since 2013, married in 2022. Tristan has been working at an import-export company since 2017. The pick-me in question, Jenny, late 20s, F, joined the company in 2020. The company consists of 3 teams, one of which is managed by Tristan, and a small admin team to do the paperwork, which Jenny is a part of. When Jenny first started, I noticed relatively quickly that she had a thing for Tristan, and he was completely oblivious to it. Once I pointed it out, he started noticing it more and started telling me stuff she did or said. She would compliment him often, ask him out to lunch on her dime, ask him to go to the gym together so he can give her tips, etc. Now, Tristan is an incredibly professional guy and cares deeply about his career. So he was refusing all of it and blocking her attempts, but in a polite manner, as he didn't want to cause drama which could impact his standing in the company. At last year's holiday party, Tristan got Jenny for Secret Santa gift exchange, and upon finding out he is her Secret Santa, she said, "Oh, this face is beautiful. You made your work wife happy." To which my husband, without skipping a beat, said, "Dave is my work wife." A few weeks prior to the company's annual summer barbecue 2 years ago, Jenny sent Tristan a team message to specifically inquire if I would be at the barbecue, as it was going to take place close to my due date. He told her that most likely neither of us will be there, regardless of whether I had given birth, as I was heavily pregnant and didn't feel like going to events. Jenny then went on a long monologue how he works so hard and needs a break, and will benefit from going to the barbecue. Tristan said, "No, thanks." We ended up not going, but she sent Tristan a picture the day of her in a very tight tank top and short shorts, next to the barbecue, holding a sausage in her hand. The message said something like, "You're missing all the fun." My husband sent her a picture of our son, born the previous day, with the message, "No, I'm not." At the holiday party a few years ago, Jenny came to our table, asking Tristan to dance. He said, "I only dance with my wife." Then she started slow dancing with another coworker, but she kept looking over at our table, along with laughing obnoxiously loudly, to make sure Tristan was looking at them, to make him jealous, I guess. Tristan was working on his lobster pasta, which is his favorite food, and didn't even notice. A few months ago I dyed my hair red, and apparently my husband was gushing at work about how much he liked it, how I looked like Poison Ivy, who was his favorite villain, etc. The following week, Jenny walks in with her newly dyed red hair. At the holiday party, which took place 5 months after my son was born, Jenny's face dropped when she saw me. She expected me to stay at home, but I needed the night out and we didn't stay long anyway. She approached me acting very concerned that I left my child, and wouldn't he miss me, that it must have been expensive to pay a babysitter. My mom was watching him. During the same party, Tristan's other coworkers were all over me, asking me questions about the baby, telling me I lost weight. I hadn't. They were being polite. When Jenny starts talking about how intermittent fasting really helped her and it might help me get back in shape. At this point, another coworker, Maria, also an admin team, hates Jenny, said, "What do you mean? She's skinnier than you," which I really wasn't, but Jenny didn't have a retort. At some point she tried acting like a brat to my husband, complaining how he never had lunch with her, to which he said that unless he was taking a client out to lunch, he was eating at his desk, so he can leave earlier to get home to his wife and kid. Shocking. When my son was 3 months old, we went to visit Tristan in his office. Jenny was standing at reception, and the look she gave me as I was approaching with the stroller was absolutely despicable. She walked away before the reception could open the door for me. I was talking to the rest of the coworkers. I realized that Jenny was the only one not there, and I was told that she had a family emergency and had to leave quickly. The straw that broke the camel's back for Tristan was 3 months ago, when Jenny offered him a concert ticket and a spa ticket, saying she was supposed to go with a friend, but they canceled. This is the point that Tristan got fed up after literal years of this, and told her very clearly that he was not interested in having any sort of relationship with her outside of work, romantic or otherwise. Jenny got offended, saying that's not what she was after and he just worked so hard and she was trying to be his friend. After that event, she kept her distance for a few months, until the event of last Wednesday that you can read in the original post. Last thing I want to say is that I trust Tristan completely. He has never ever given me reason not to. And during all this time, I was genuinely amused at Jenny's behavior. If I'm allowed to be mean for a second, she's always given me desperate vibes, and all of this is too pathetic for me to take it seriously. I left a tiny note in a library book for a stranger, and months later it found its way back to me. I go to the library when I'm trying not to spend money or spiral. It's quiet in a way that doesn't demand anything from you, just soft carpet, the hum of the vents, and people pretending they're not using books as emotional support. Last spring, I was in a weird season of my life. Nothing movie dramatic had happened. I was still going to work, still answering texts, still laughing at the right parts of conversations. But I also had this constant feeling like I was a half-second behind my own life, like everyone else had a script and I was improvising with a blank page. So I ended up at the library after work, standing in the self-help section like I was browsing at a pharmacy. Not because I love self-help, but because sometimes you just want to hold something that promises quietly that you won't feel like this forever. I'm scanning the shelves when I notice a girl a few feet away. Early 20s maybe, hair in a messy bun, wearing a sweatshirt that looked like it had been slept in, holding a book to her chest like a shield. She wasn't sobbing, it was that other kind of crying. The kind where you're trying to stay invisible. Tight jaw, red eyes, fast blinking, breathing like you're swallowing everything back down. I did what most people do, I looked away. Then I looked back because my brain wouldn't let it go. She pulled another book off the shelf, stared at the back cover and whispered to herself so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "I just need something that doesn't make it worse." That line, I don't know, it felt painfully specific. Like it came from someone who'd already tried the be positive stuff and didn't have the energy for it. So before I could talk myself out of it, I stepped a little closer and said softly, "Do you want a recommendation? Like one that's not aggressive?" She looked up like I'd startled her, then shrugged in that exhausted way people shrug when they're trying to be brave and polite at the same time. "Sure. I just can't do anything that's like change your life in 10 steps. I laughed once because same. I pulled a book off the shelf that I'd borrowed before. Not life-changing, not preachy, just calm. The kind of book that talks to you like a human being. This one doesn't yell at you. She took it, read the first page standing right there, and her shoulders dropped a tiny bit like her body had decided it could unclench. Then she looked up at me almost embarrassed. "I feel stupid. I don't even know why I'm crying." And I said the most honest thing I could think of. "You don't have to know. Sometimes your brain is just tired." She nodded fast like she needed permission to believe that. We stood there for a second, two strangers in a quiet aisle, both pretending we were just casually browsing books and not holding ourselves together with paperback glue. "Thank you." "Of course. And that should have been the end of it, but my hands did this automatic thing like muscle memory. I dug in my bag, found a pen, and tore a corner off the library receipt sticking out of my wallet. On it I wrote, "If all you can do today is read one page, that counts." Then, because I didn't want it to feel like a big deal, I added a tiny star in the corner. I handed it to her like it was nothing. She stared at it for a second, then smiled in a small, surprised way. Not happy, just less alone. She tucked it into the book. "I'm Nora." I told her my name. We didn't exchange numbers, didn't do the let's be friends thing, just nodded at each other like we'd agreed to keep each other's softness safe, and then we went our separate ways. I didn't think about it much after that. Life kept doing its thing, summer happened, work got busy. My brain stayed loud. Then in October I had one of those days that starts bad and then keeps proving it's not finished. Missed a meeting, my manager said, "No worries," in the tone that means some worries. The train got stuck between stations long enough for everyone to start staring at the ceiling like we could telepathically move it. By the time I got home I was so drained I couldn't even do the normal coping things. Just stood in my kitchen staring at the sink like it was personally offensive. So I did what I always do when I don't trust myself alone with my thoughts. I went to the library. It was raining, that cold rain that makes the whole world feel gray. Inside it was warm and quiet and steady. I walked to the same aisle without thinking. Self-help, essays, the soft books. And for a minute I just stood there letting the silence cover me. Then I saw it, the exact book ID handed Nora months ago. Same cover, same spine crease. It was back on the shelf. I don't know why that made my throat tighten, but it did. Like the universe had quietly placed a reminder in front of me. I pulled it out and flipped it open without even meaning to. A little paper slipped out and fluttered to the floor. A torn receipt corner. A tiny star in the corner. My handwriting. I just stared at it confused because there's no way. Then I turned it over. On the back in different handwriting, neater, calmer, someone had written, I did one page, then another. I don't know if it fixed anything, but it made it less sharp. Thank you for not making it worse. P.S. I'm okay now. I hope you are too. Nora. I stood there in the aisle with my fingers on that stupid little piece of paper like it was a live wire. Because the thing about kindness is you never know where it lands. You do it and you move on, you tell yourself it probably didn't matter. And then months later, on the exact kind of day you were trying to survive, it shows up again quietly like a hand on your shoulder. I didn't cry. Not fully. I just breathed in slow and felt something in my chest loosen for the first time all day. I put the note back inside the book, not as a pass-it-on thing, just where it belonged. Then I checked out a different book, went home, made tea and read exactly one page before I fell asleep on the couch. And honestly, that counted. I was paid $1 million to stand perfectly still in a cornfield for 7 nights. I wasn't scaring away birds. My name is Miguel. I'm 28 years old, an ex-Marine, and until 2 weeks ago, I was deep in the hole with the agency. It was in that scenario of desperation that I found the ad. It wasn't on the dark web, nor in some shady back alley. It was in a printed newspaper, the kind nobody reads anymore, forgotten on a park bench. The kind of place I shouldn't have even stopped to look at. It read, needed, static field security, location, Boa Safra Farm, interior of Mato Grosso, Brazil, duration, 7 nights, harvest period, requirements, extreme physical resilience, total muscle control, military discipline, payment, $1 million, tax-free, offshore deposit. Note: candidate must be capable of remaining motionless for 12-hour periods. $1 million. A scam, obviously. But when I called the number, the voice on the other end didn't try to sell me anything. It just gave me GPS coordinates and a time. Would they steal my kidney and leave me waking up in a bathtub full of ice? To be honest, not even my kidneys are worth much these days, so I took the risk. The interview was brief. The contractor, a man named Colonel Valdemar, met me in a warehouse on the side of a dirt road. He didn't look like a farmer. He looked like a warden. Sun-cured face, scarred hands, and a look that evaluated me like a slab of meat at a butcher shop. Not a professional. "Can you stay still, kid?" he asked, smoking a straw cigarette that smelled like burnt manure. "I sat in a hide site in Haiti for 14 hours without moving a muscle, sir," I replied. "Haiti is a playground compared to my plantation." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "The job is simple. You put on the suit. You get up on the stand. You stay there from 6 in the evening until 6 in the morning. If you come down before the bell rings, you lose the contract. If you accidentally move when they are close, you lose your life." I signed the contract. The paper was thick, yellowed. There were clauses about biological risk, irreversible psychological damage, and accidental disappearance. I didn't read it properly. I only saw the number with 6 zeros. The farm was in the middle of absolute nowhere. Miles and miles of corn. But it wasn't common corn. The stalks were too tall, almost 10 feet high. The leaves were a dark, oily green that shined under the scorching sun. And the ears of corn were red. A vivid, arterial red. "It's transgenic," Valdemar explained, catching my stare. "Resistant to pests. But it attracts another kind of pest." We went to the center of the cornfield. There was a circular clearing, and in the middle of it, a solid wooden cross treated with pitch, featuring supports for feet and a backrest. "Your post," he pointed. Then he handed me the uniform. I was expecting camouflage fatigues, or maybe a tactical vest. What he gave me looked like a medieval nightmare. A jumpsuit made of thick leather, reinforced with ceramic plates and Kevlar underneath. Over the leather, coarse burlap was stitched on, mimicking the clothes of a classic scarecrow. The smell of the outfit was ranker than the breath of the local crackheads. "Why the smell?" I asked, holding back vomit as I pulled on the heavy pants. "Olfactory camouflage," Valdemar said seriously. "They are blind, but their sense of smell is sharp. This disguises your human scent. If they smell live people, they attack." The mask was the worst part. A burlap sack reinforced with an internal steel cage to protect the face. There were only 2 tiny holes for the eyes, covered by a dark mesh. Before leaving me there for the first night, Valdemar went over the rules. He spoke with the gravity of a priest giving last rites. Total immobility. They sense vibration. If you tremble, they know where you are. Silence. If you have to sneeze, bite your tongue until it bleeds, but do not make a sound. The bell? I ring the bell at the main house at 6 a.m. Only come down when you hear the bell. Never before. Even if it looks like the sun has risen. They mimic the light. Contact. They will climb on you. They will smell you. They will touch you. Do not react. The suit can withstand a few light bites. But if you decide to be stupid and react, they will gut you, and that suit will tear like paper. He helped me up onto the support. He strapped my feet with leather buckles but left my arms free, though resting on the crossbar. "Good luck, Miguel." The last guy lasted 3 nights. What was left of him, we buried with the fertilizer. Valdemar left. I was used to insane orders. My previous commanders had put me in worse situations. His jeep disappeared into the dust. The sun went down. And the cornfield woke up. The first night was a test of pain, not fear. Staying still in a crucifix position is anatomically torturous. Within 2 hours, my shoulders burned. My legs were numb. Sweat ran down inside the leather suit, boiling my skin, but I couldn't scratch. The smell of the clothes impregnated my nostrils, making me dizzy, but let's say, it was all expected so far. The cornfield was noisy. The wind hit the hard leaves, making a sound like crumpled paper. I kept imagining things. Footsteps, whispers. But I knew it was my mind projecting fear. I saw nothing, just the dark green sea under the moonlight. When the bell rang at 6 o'clock, I almost fell off the cross support. Valdemar had to help me walk to the headquarters. My muscles were locked up. "Good start," he said, "but they haven't found you yet. It takes them a while to sense something new." On the 3rd night, the wind stopped. Silence fell over the farm like a lead shroud. I was up there, fighting the insane urge to crack my neck, when I heard it. It wasn't the sound of corn breaking. It was the sound of earth being turned, like a gravedigger preparing the ground for a coffin. Except, unlike that, it was coming from below, from the roots. I looked down, moving only my pupils without turning my head. The earth between the rows of corn began to swell, as if giant moles were digging to the surface. And then a hand came out of the dirt. It wasn't a human hand. It was long, pale, with 6 thin fingers that looked like white roots. The nails were black, curved claws. The creature emerged. It was humanoid but disproportionate. About 7 feet tall, thin to the point of being skeletal. The skin was white, milky, covered in pulsating blue veins. It had no eyes. In their place, there was just smooth skin. I could say it looked a lot like that internet legend, Slender Man. The creature wasn't alone, though. Another came out of the earth to the left. Another to the right. There were dozens of them. The Reapers, as my mind christened them. They walked strangely with spasmodic movements, joints cracking. They sniffed the air, their eyeless heads swaying from side to side. The smell that wafted up to me was horrible. The smell of an open grave. One of them approached my post. It hugged the wood. It began to climb. My heart raced. "They hear vibration," Valdemar had said. I tried to calm my heart using military breathing techniques, but panic is biological. The creature climbed until it was level with my boots. It licked the leather of my boot. The tongue was black, long, and rough. It was looking for meat, but the chemical smell of the suit worked. The creature recoiled, seeming confused. It hissed something to the others, a clicking sound like dolphins, and climbed down. They began to eat the corn, not the cobs. They tore the stalks and drank the red sap that oozed from inside. I stayed there, static, watching that grotesque banquet until dawn. On the 5th night, it rained. A summer storm, violent, with lightning that illuminated the field like flashes from God's camera. The rain was a problem. Water washed away some of the smell of my suit. That olfactory protection dripping down my legs. The creatures came out of the earth earlier, frantic with the rain. They knew something was wrong. One of the Reapers, larger than the others, with deep scars on its pale chest, came straight to where I was. It didn't hesitate. It climbed fast with the agility of a spider. In seconds, it was face to face with me. I could see the pores in its skin. It had no eyes, aiming its empty face in my direction. The nostrils, like slits in the center of its face, flared. It raised a clawed hand and touched my chest. The claw scratched the burlap, hitting the ceramic plate underneath. It tilted its head, as if curious. It brought its face close to my mask, licked the steel mesh where my mouth was. I felt its viscous saliva fall onto my lip. I wanted to scream, to kick, to draw the knife I didn't have. But I froze. I turned my body into stone. If I moved a millimeter, it would tear out my throat. It stayed there for an hour. A whole hour, hanging on the cross, breathing in my face, touching me, smelling me. The Reaper ran its long claws along my neck, looking for an entry into the suit. Of course, I cried in silence, just as I had done countless times as a Marine. Tears ran down my face inside the mask, salty and hot. I guess in the end that was my luck, being used to acting correctly under pressure. Suddenly, a lightning bolt struck nearby. The boom was deafening. The creature was startled. It let out a high-pitched scream and jumped, disappearing into the corn. I spent the rest of the night trembling, praying for the bell to ring. When Valdemar picked me up in the morning, I couldn't speak. He saw the scratches on the suit. "They're getting bold," he murmured. "Just 2 more nights, kid. Hang in there." The last night, I was exhausted. My mind was worse than before. I was seeing things even with the sun high in the sky. Valdemar gave me a double dose of stimulants before I went up. "Tonight is the royal harvest," he said. "They'll be hungry." I climbed onto the support and positioned myself on the cross. The sun set. The cornfield went silent. At 8 p.m. they appeared. Not dozens. Hundreds. The entire field moved. A sea of white bodies emerging from the red earth. They didn't eat the corn this time. They just surrounded me. They formed a perfect circle, looking up at me. They began to sing. A low, vibrating hum that made my teeth ache. I understood then. I wasn't a security guard. I wasn't just some scarecrow to ward off pests. I was the totem, the focus, the suit, the smell. It wasn't to hide me. It was to excite them. Valdemar was growing that red corn with the blood of the earth, and those things were the gardeners. And to keep them docile, to keep them working, he needed to give them an idol. Toy. A lure that smelled like prey but couldn't be eaten. At least not yet. 3 of them started climbing the cross at the same time. The weight made the wood creak. They reached me. 1 on each leg, 1 on my chest. They began to tear at the burlap. Sharp claws found the leather. They ripped it. They bit the ceramic plates. They broke their teeth on the plates, but they didn't stop. Their black blood ran down my suit. I was being devoured alive from inside my armor. I felt a claw pierce a seam of the suit on my thigh. In my years as a Marine, I'd never felt pain like this. It was worse than a shattered bone. The tip of the claw entered my flesh. I bit my tongue. I tasted blood. I didn't scream. Rule 1, do not move. If I moved, they would realize the armor had soft meat underneath everywhere. As long as I stayed still, they thought I was hard, a tough nut to crack. They pulled at my arms. They dislocated my left shoulder. The bone popped out with a snap. The pain blinded me. I was going to pass out. If I passed out, my body would go limp. They would know. I concentrated everything on my mental clock. Almost there. Almost there. They were ripping chunks off the helmet. The steel mesh was bending. The milky eye of one of them, wait, no, they had no eyes, the smooth skin where an eye should be, was pressed against my eye, separated by millimeters of metal. That was when I heard the sound of a miracle. A gunshot? No. The bell. The bell from the main house rang. But it wasn't 6 o'clock. It was 5:30. The sky was still dark. The creatures stopped. The sound of the bell seemed to hurt them. It was a specific frequency. They wailed in pain all at once and scrambled down from the cross, diving back into the earth like cockroaches fleeing the light. I was left alone, hanging, bleeding, shoulder dislocated, suit in tatters. Valdemar's jeep arrived, tires screeching. He jumped out with a rifle and a powerful flashlight. "Get down! Now!" he screamed. Valdemar ran to me and cut the straps on my feet. I fell to the ground like a sack of potatoes. He dragged me to the jeep and floored it. I looked back. The cornfield was on fire. Valdemar had torched the plantation. "The harvest is over," he said, driving like a madman. I had to ring the bell early. I woke up 2 days later in a private hospital in Sao Paulo. Operated shoulder. Stitches in my thigh. There was a lawyer in the room. He handed me a tablet. "The transfer has been made. $1 million. Sign here confirming receipt and the non-disclosure agreement." I signed. I didn't want to argue. I wanted distance. I bought my freedom. I paid off the agency. I bought a penthouse in the city, far from any plantations, far from any ground where I could see a single inch of dirt. But, of course, money doesn't buy oblivion. Sometimes, when I'm standing in line at the bank or waiting for the elevator, I go still. Absolutely still. And I feel it. I smell the suit I wore. I feel the phantom weight of something climbing up my legs. I feel the hot, rotting breath on my face. And I'm afraid to look down. Because I know they don't eat corn. The red corn was just a side dish. What they wanted, what they tasted when that claw pierced my leg, was me. And now they know my flavor. They are blind, but Valdemar said they never forget a scent. I live on the 10th floor. It's high up, but they come from the earth. And buildings have deep foundations. Last night, I heard a sound coming from the flower pot on my balcony. Earth being turned over. I think I'm going to need a new suit. And this time, I'm not standing still. accidentally went to a QAnon party. This happened last week. In May or so, I met a girl at a writer's workshop who seemed pretty cool and artsy. We exchanged information, and she asked me to be in her short film. I'm not an actress, but it's something to do, and she's really passionate about it, and I wanted to support her. I thought it would be fun. I'm filming with this guy who's kinda creep, but it is what it is. He's not like a violent creep, he just kind of coerced me into doing something I had told him I didn't want to do once. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to ruin my friend's project, and because we'd already done a fair bit of filming. Anyway, she invited both me and him over to her house to film a couple scenes for the film last week. We're hanging out and filming, and she starts talking about the movie The Sound of Freedom. She's like, the same people that went after Mel Gibson went after that movie and tried to ban it. That kind of made my ears perk up, like, what do you mean by that? But I didn't press it because I'm at her house. For reference, I live in the Bronx and she's in Jersey, and PATH trains are down at this point. She then proceeds to talk about how Hillary Clinton eats babies, and how there's a video of Hillary Clinton laughing with blood on her face after she ate a baby. She's not a Trump supporter BTW. She's like the world's first centrist QAnoner apparently. Anyway, her boyfriend and the creepy guy are there. Her boyfriend is hyping her up, and the creepy guy is going bar for bar with her in terms of conspiracy theories. He starts talking about pedophiles and trafficking and all this shit, while being blissfully unaware that he himself is a creep. Anyway, she starts talking about the Jews and saying they killed Jesus. I responded by saying that, as an Italian American, my ancestors actually did that and we shouldn't erase Italian achievements. They did not really get that joke and went right back to conspiracy stuff. My friend then said that they eat babies as part of their rituals. I think the word ritual is very loaded and intentionally sinister, because I grew up believing I was eating the body and blood of Christ every Sunday and no one calls that a ritual, but whatever. Also, that's kind of the least objectionable thing about her whole diatribe. Anyway, I push back on this and I'm like, yeah, they don't do that. She responds by saying she saw it on TikTok. Mind you, she and her boyfriend are both 31, and the creepy guy who was agreeing with this was 36. Then they started talking about how breakfast is a scam from food companies and how you shouldn't eat breakfast, and how the education system is a scam. I think higher education in the US is very scammy and inequitable, but she was like, I know as much as actual psychiatrists but can't practice as one. And I'm thinking no, because you believe in lizard people. I have a fucking master's degree and am coincidentally the only person at this party who doesn't think Jewish people eat babies. But I'm just tuning them out and focused on surviving the end of the night, lol. I'm thinking I need to go to bed to avoid these people. The PATH trains were down by this point, so I had no way of getting home. She had to film some stuff with the creepy guy. I asked if I could fall asleep on her couch. She said yes. She woke me up at 4 a.m. and said creepy guy wanted to drive me home. I'm like, I bet he does. And asked if I could just sleep on her couch and take the train in the morning. She asked if I was sure. And I was like, I've literally never been more sure of anything. In the morning, I woke up early and headed back home. This reminds me of why education is important. Like these are grown-ass people who have been brain-rotted by TikTok and think they're enlightened or whatever. I accidentally found out my coworker, F, sells nudes online. In Poland, there's this website for pretty fucked up femdom items for sale, like used underwear, condoms, and other disgusting kinks. Masztkeomat PLDLA was Polakau. And one day me and my friend decided to scroll through it BC. We were bored as heck. We have already done something like that being looking up whores for shits and giggles. We never ordered any. So we've decided to do STH similar once again. We were just flipping through the pages, clicking on whatever listings we found funny, overly disgusting, plain fucked up, or just ones without much context. There was a lot of disgusting stuff like cookies with a girl's poop inside, condoms used by some random ass guys, so you can imagine how we were laughing our asses off knowing that there are people who genuinely buy that shit. After a bit of scrolling, we've stumbled across a listing that said, I'll give you photos meant discreetly for my boyfriend, with a selfie as the thumbnail. Her face was covered by her phone. We didn't pay much attention to it, but we did open the listing BC. We both were stunned that people are selling shit like that. After that we've scrolled a bit more but got bored of it, so we just headed back home and finished it. Sometime later summer rolls around, and since there's no school anymore, Eve decided to get a summer job to get some extra money. I went to a clothing shop which has accepted 3 new people alongside me, total of 4. One of which turned out to be the girl from the listing above. That night when I realized that holy fuck it was her, I came back onto the site and turns out that it really was her. Everything matched, her hair, clothes, heck she even used the same photo on her Facebook, which yes is still relevant in Poland, so I had absolutely no doubts about this being her. What's more fun, sometime later I realized that I even went to high school with her. Not the same class but the same school. Now, mind you, that site covers literally the entire Poland, so what are the odds that I'd find someone from my small-ass city, 80k people? Let alone someone I know so well and who is my colleague. What are the odds? Customer was convinced their computer was hacked, it was just a Windows update. Had one of those tech support calls the other day. A customer calls in absolutely panicking. Full on yelling like a monkey that his computer has been hacked. Everything is compromised and his screen is showing a fatal error. He's convinced someone is actively inside his system. I spend the next 30 minutes walking him through basic troubleshooting, asking what exactly the message says when it appeared, what he was doing before it popped up. The answers are vague, frantic, and not especially helpful. Every explanation I give gets overridden by more panic. Eventually, I ask the obvious question. Can you send me a screenshot of what you're seeing? He does. It's a Windows update notification. Restart required. That's it. That's the entire crisis. Somehow, your device needs to restart to finish installing updates. Got translated in his head to fatal error, system compromised, hackers everywhere. LOL, I had to very carefully explain that no. Nothing was hacked, and yes, this is a normal thing that happens to literally everyone. After we hung up, I just sat there for a minute, stared at my screen, played a quick game of Jackpot City on my phone to reset my brain, and wondered how much of tech support is really just advanced reading comprehension. 30 minutes of my shift gone because someone interpreted restart required as the end of the world. Still not the worst call I've had, but it's up there. I was 2 months pregnant when my dog saved my life. I am a hard worker and had a quite eventful January and February in 2016. For your reference, I was 37 at the time of this story. In January, while I was completely single, I found out I was pregnant after thinking I couldn't have kids for my adult life. I had a dog who was 6 years old. She was part lab, part boxer, and the sweetest, smartest dog I've ever had. We lived in a duplex that my parents owned. My parents had bought it for my grandmother when I was a teenager, and after my grandmother passed away, they offered my grandmother's side to my cousin who was struggling financially to raise her 2 kids. My parents rented out the other side to help with the mortgage payment. At the time of the story, I was now living on one side and my cousin and her son on the other, her daughter having moved out a few years earlier. So this night had been a late night at work. I got home sometime around 11 and chose to watch TV in the living room for a bit in my recliner. My dog was laying with me and we both fell asleep. At some time during the middle of the night, my dog woke me up barking like crazy, trying to see out the living room window. I decided to look out the window too. I saw flames going up the side of my cousin's garage from a concrete planter. I ran outside with a pitcher of water. I saw the word horse spray painted on the garage door. Saw flames from under the door that was 6 inches off the ground. All of my grandmother's belongings that hadn't been gone through were in there. Her paperback books, her pictures, her beddings, rugs, throw rugs, multiple things she had crocheted. Really anything my cousin had deemed unusable when she moved in. I threw the door open to see if I could do anything. It was the worst mistake ever. I think the oxygen just made it all go up. Then I went and grabbed my phone, called 911, and started frantically banging on my cousin's front door. I got her and her son roused and out of the house right before the firefighters got there. They went into full firefighting mode. The fire ravaged the garage and the laundry room and part of the kitchen. There was glass by the concrete planter. After talking to me, it was decided that a Molotov cocktail had been thrown at the house and some of the flaming liquid had gone under the garage door. My cousin thinks it was her daughter's ex. He was looking for the daughter after having been released from jail. No charges could ever be filed. It sucked. My cousin stayed with a neighbor while repairs were made and then moved back in. The thing is, my cousin didn't have a working smoke detector, and in my business of finding out I was pregnant and a busy time at work, I hadn't put new batteries in mine. Thank you, ADHD. If my loving dog hadn't woken me up, my cousin, her son, myself, and my own fetus could have possibly died. Check your smoke detectors. My husband won't stop hugging me. I think blunt force trauma to the head has cured my husband's OCD. Seb had always been weird about touch. He never held my hand, and when we kissed, he'd pull out an antibacterial wipe. We never had sex. Every time we tried, Seb would break down, saying that physical contact with me hurt him. Eventually, he opened up about his first relationship in 8th grade with a girl who didn't respect boundaries. Over time, I got used to it. Seb was worth it. He was awkward in a way that made me fall for him. Seb started therapy, and slowly, because things don't just change overnight, he began tangling his fingers with mine, even if only for a second. We came up with an alternative for touching. Blowing kisses at each other kept us closer. There was an out-of-state clinic that specialized in obsessive-compulsive disorder. Seb was driving, and I was trying and failing to direct via Google Maps. The next thing I knew, we were being run off the road by an 8-wheeler. I remember blood. I remember screaming, half-conscious. Seb wasn't moving, his head lodged against the steering wheel. I woke up in a brightly lit room. Flowers bloomed next to me. Hospital. Seb, I croaked, trying to wrench out my four. Where's my husband? I'm here. A shadow loomed over me, and part of me felt like it was splitting apart. I started sobbing. Seb with that stupid smile. His head was bandaged, bruises flowering under his eye. But he was okay. Seb greeted me with a soft kiss on the forehead. His lips were warm. Home. Hey, sweetheart, he whispered, pulling my weak body into a hug. I had never been so close to him. He felt like a puzzle piece that slotted perfectly into me. I swallowed my sobs and hugged him back, squeezing him to my chest. When we were discharged, we went home. Immediately, Seb was all over me, kissing my neck, his hand down my shirt, and I was so touch-starved that I dragged him upstairs to bed. I was half asleep when he rolled over, his breath warm against my ear. Do you know what cancer feels like, babe? I didn't respond, and he sighed. Like razor blades in my blood. You don't have cancer, I mumbled. I felt him move closer, pinning me to the bed. I don't anymore. My eyes snapped open, as his lips ran down my spine in a giggle. Do you know what filthy cash can get you, Melody? He traced my back. An escape from cancer. His voice darkened. An escape from a broken body, and a brand new one. Brain dead, yes, but that's what I'm here for. He hummed, wrapping his arms around me. Your husband's body is perfect. Unbroken. I can walk. I can fucking breathe. Seb rolled onto his back and laughed. I think I'm going to keep him. My mom lives in a long-term care facility due to her physical limitations and memory issues. They take good care of her and the other residents, including a calendar full of activities designed for this specific population. One of those activities is sock sorting. My mom wanted to do this one, but not at 10 a.m. when it was scheduled for. Instead, I was able to borrow the 6 pairs of socks from the activities department. I brought them to her. She folded them, all the while complaining that the staff was too lazy to do it themselves. When she finished, she asked, "Is that all?" I unfolded the pairs of socks and handed them back to her. She stared at me and said, "I just did those. Why did you pull them apart?" She did not care for my explanation of it being an activity instead of a job. I have lots of socks, I said. I'll bring them to you tomorrow. The next morning, I took 40 pairs of socks out of my top drawer. I pulled them apart from one another and tossed them like a salad in the laundry basket. I put them in a large blue bag and drove to Mom's place. She looked so happy when I showed her what I brought. I explained that I could stay for only a short time on that day. She cleared space on her table and bed to make room for the pile. As she started to match and pair socks, I grabbed a clear bag for her to put them in. I thought if she could see them, she would remember what she had done. As you can guess, gentle reader, she did not. Within a few hours of completing her challenge, and after I had left for the day, a CNA asked her about the bag on her bed. Do you remember one of the reasons she lives in long-term care? She told the CNA, I have no idea. Get rid of it. And the CNA did. She took my 40 pairs of white athletic, wool hiking, and other unlabeled socks down to the facility's laundry. I've talked to the receptionist, 2 CNAs, and the nurse manager. No one knows where any of my socks are. I even snuck into the laundry room after hours to look with my own 2 eyes. I opened doors, lifted piles, and moved bins to no avail. Now when I visit my mom, I find myself looking at residents' feet. One day, there was a game of bingo in the dining room that I went over to watch for a few minutes. No one was wearing my socks. I have yet to see a pair of my socks in use. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't take the socks off of a resident's foot if I were to see a pair. I would like to know who received which pairs. Perhaps when I do recognize my socks on a resident, it'll be the reason I talk to someone new to me at the facility.